Chapter 444. After unleashing the Crimson God Arrow at Qingli, Enlin waved his hand and retrieved the flame-sealing disc and her storage ring. He planned to store them in his own storage ring. However, the flame-sealing disc possessed a life force energy, so he was unable to store it in his storage ring. Was the holy vermilion flame a type of intelligent life form? No wonder the Snow Maiden wanted the flame-sealing disc. He was a little surprised, and he turned to look at the severely wounded Snow Maiden. Even though the Snow Maiden was fleeing with all her might, she was still within 50 kilometers of Enlin, which was a clear indication of how severely wounded she was. A faint smile appeared on Enlin's face, and he took a step forward, covering a distance of several dozen kilometers before arriving directly in front of the Snow Maiden. The Snow Maiden's face instantly paled at the sight of Enlin, and she stood rooted to the spot as if she had seen a ghost. She was so scared that she didn't even have the thought of resisting. "What, you're not going to attack me anymore?" Enlin looked at the Snow Maiden with a hint of a smile on his face. "You were the one who beat Su Xiaolan and I to death, even though you were severely wounded. Why are you so scared now?" The Snow Maiden shook her head with a trembling voice. Please spare my life, Senior. I only reached the return to void stage after cultivating for over 10,000 years. I don't want to die just like this." Tears streamed down her face, and her expression was one of fear and pleading. "I can sign a slave contract, please don't kill me." A holy palace leader was trembling uncontrollably as she begged for mercy. Enlin couldn't help but furrow his brows upon seeing this. "Are you done?" Enlin asked. I beg you, I'll do anything you want me to," the Snow Maiden pleaded. "Anything you want? Then go to hell." Enlin's sword fell. A black light sliced through heaven and earth before engulfing the Snow Maiden's body. Enlin had initially wanted to bully the Snow Maiden, but he instantly lost interest at the sight of her pitiful state. He picked up her storage ring and began his journey back. He had obtained the storage rings of 5 holy palace leaders during this battle, and he had also completed the Divine Simulation Technique mission, thereby obtaining an extremely bad *SS spell technique. Thinking about it this way, his rewards were not bad at all. He returned to Su Xiaolan's side. Su Xiaolan stood on the melted snow with a gentle smile on her face. "Is it done? Kill them all. Leave no one alive. This is our sex flame-sealing disc, take good care of it." Enlin smiled as he tossed the flame-sealing disc to Su Xiaolan. Su Xiaolan's expression faltered slightly, and she nodded heavily as she accepted the flame-sealing disc. "I'll be out for a while," Su Xiaolan said. "I'll be out of energy for a while," she said. "Don't worry, I can take care of you," I said. I am. I'm Su said with a star. Soon, the energy within Enlin's body was completely depleted, and he was struck by an indescribable sense of dizziness and weakness. Su Xiaolan hurriedly made her way over to him and helped him up. The two of them were pressed against each other. Enlin could feel the warmth of the woman beside him, and he could also smell a faint fragrance. It was very pleasant, and it caused a ripple in his heart. My voice transmission talisman has already been destroyed by the Snow Maidens. When my vital energy has recovered, I'll use the Golden Phoenix's cry to contact the nearby elders and hand over the flame-sealing disc to them, Su Xiaolan said. Enlin nodded. "Then what do we do now?" Su Xiaolan thought for a moment and was about to speak. Hundreds of miles away, a speck of green light flickered like a star. Su Xiaolan seemed to sense something and looked into the distance. Her pupils constricted, and she stood in front of Enlin without hesitation. The next moment the green light disappeared. Su Xiaolan felt the temperature behind her drop, and a chill filled her heart. She immediately turned around as panic and fear appeared in her eyes. "Enlin!" she yelled. A green icicle had pierced through Enlin's chest. A boundless chill spread through the air, and the icicle glowed with a sinister light under the sun. Su Xiaolan immediately grabbed the icicle and pulled it out before tossing it to the ground. The green icicle seemed to have been stimulated by something, and it shrunk into a green glassy ball. The color on its surface was dim, as if it had expended all of its energy. Without any hesitation, Su Xiaolan incinerated the ball-shaped object with her flames to prevent it from attacking again. She held onto Enlin's body tightly. "Enlin, are you all right?" she asked in a panicked voice. "Cold." Enlin's entire body trembled as a layer of frost appeared on his punctured chest, and the frost was spreading relentlessly. Su Xiaolan injected the flame power in her body into Enlin's body. Then, she took Enlin to a secluded cave nearby to avoid potential enemies. "Enlin, are you all right?" Su Xiaolan discovered that the flame power she was injecting into Enlin's body was being engulfed by the power of extreme frost, and she was completely unable to stop the chill from spreading. Enlin's body trembled, and he was unable to speak. The chill was extremely terrifying. Not only did it freeze his flesh, bones, and meridians, but it also froze his vital energy and consciousness. Furthermore, it was imbued with a destructive power. This power was extremely similar to the power of Qing Li's divine azure bird. Both of them froze their targets before disintegrating them. I was too careless. This might really be the power left behind by Qing Li. I didn't think that I would be bitten by it. Enlin's consciousness gradually blurred, and he finally fell into a deep slumber. "Enlin, Enlin!" Su Xiaolan yelled, and her flame power surged into Enlin's body in a frenzy. However, there was still no sign of improvement. She was panicking, and her heart was filled with anxiety and fear. A layer of frost gradually covered Enlin's skin. "What do I do? What do I do? Oh right, there's a first-grade golden phoenix immortal fruit." She was preparing to use it to break through to the soul formation stage. The flame power imbued within the fruit was extremely powerful, so it should be able to keep out this frost poison. Su Xiaolan pulled out the golden phoenix immortal fruit from her storage ring, and a scorching wave of energy radiated outward, instantly dispelling the chill in the cave and warming up the cave. She didn't waste any more time and immediately transferred the energy within the immortal fruit into Enlin's body. A vast amount of pure flame power surged into Enlin's body. This divine fruit contained a wisp of the power of the phoenix, which was the bane of all frost poisons, so it should be able to work. Sure enough, the frost on Enlin's body gradually melted, and a hint of color appeared on his face. Su Xiaolan heaved a sigh of relief, and a faint smile finally appeared on her face. The energy within the immortal fruit had been exhausted, and she extended a hand toward the puncture wound on Enlin's chest, where blood was still flowing. All of a sudden, the blood congealed. Immediately afterward, an azure light imbued with the power of extreme frost quickly expanded toward Enlin's body, as if it had been repressed for a long time and had suddenly exploded forth. The thin azure lines covered Enlin's entire body like blood vessels, and a terrifying power of extreme frost erupted with a certain destructive power. Su Xiaolan's body swayed slightly upon seeing this, and she seemed to be on the brink of collapse. She held on to Enlin tightly as she murmured, "Impossible. You won't die, there must be a way." She suddenly thought of the life-saving trump card that her second uncle, the sect leader of the Vermilion Bird sect, Zhu Shuza, had given her. This was an item that she could use when she encountered a problem that she couldn't solve. This was an item that even the Tao integration stage true gods held in high regard, the Tao-seeking heavenly book. Su Xiaolan pulled out that item without hesitation. It was a piece of yellowed leather parchment. Instantly, an invisible aura rippled through the air, imbued with the power of the great Tao. Su Xiaolan pressed the Tao-seeking heavenly book against Enlin's head and used her mind to communicate with the heavenly book before writing a series of crimson words using her own blood. Question: How can I save Enlin? Chapter 445. Question: How can I save Enlin? The surface of the Tao-seeking heavenly book glowed with a yellow light, and it slowly absorbed the blood. Then, it started to leave Enlin's body, and it started to burn in the void. Golden characters appeared in the void as the Tao-seeking heavenly book burned. Every single character was extremely compatible with the Tao intent. They fused with heaven and earth, and they resonated with heaven and earth. Method 1. Have a Tao integration stage living being use the power of the divine Tao to cleanse Enlin's body within 7.5 minutes. Method 2. Transplant the divine phoenix bloodline into Enlin's body within 7.5 minutes. Use the true flame origin of the bloodline to expel the cold. Method 3. Find a fire-type divine paragon fruit and consume it within 7.5 minutes. There's also a 50% chance that the cold will be eliminated. Su Xiaolan stared at the three methods. Her eyes shone with the light of the flames, and her body seemed a little frail. 7.5 minutes was only 7 or 8 minutes. Time was of the essence. Once time was up, Enlin's vital energy would be severed. The third method was the most direct. She glanced at Enlin's storage ring and her own. Neither of them had a fire-type divine paragon fruit. Come to think of it, this kind of divine paragon fruit was a grade higher than immortal fruit. Even return to void stage mighty figures rarely had one. As for the first method, have a Tao integration stage living being use the power of the divine Tao to cleanse Enlin's body and expel the cold. She couldn't contact her second uncle, nor could she contact the Grand Elder of the sect. The probability of other Tao integration stage mighty figures arriving within 7.5 minutes was close to zero. That left only the second method. Perfect. She knew this method. She had obtained Xin Yin's inheritance in the Winter Dragon tomb. That inheritance contained the method to transplant Dongfang Ming's bloodline into Xin Yin. Xin Yin was a mighty figure of the dragon tribe who possessed the dragon and phoenix bloodlines. She had obtained the phoenix bloodline through a bloodline transplant right before Dongfang Ming died. The two of them definitely did not expect that 10,000 years later, a girl who possessed both the dragon and phoenix bloodlines would transfer her divine phoenix bloodline to another man. It's just that, this method of transplanting my bloodline will cause my Tao foundation to collapse, and my strength will rapidly flow away. In the end, I'll become a mortal woman who can't cultivate. Su Xiaolan smiled as she muttered to herself, and her smile carried a trace of bitterness. She hugged Enlin and looked at the man covered in frost. There was no hesitation on her face as she began to chant the ancient mantra. The incantation was like a ballad with a beautiful melody. Xin Yin had always loved singing, so she had modified Dongfang Ming's bloodline transplant chant so that the bloodline transplant could be perfected with the help of music. This was a solo performance without an audience. Su Xiaolan's voice was actually very good. It was gentle with the clear and melodious voice of a phoenix, which could warm and soothe people's hearts. For some reason, she suddenly thought back to the concert that she had performed with Enlin in the mortal world. That night, she played the guqin, and her white dress fluttered in the wind like an orchid in a deserted valley. Enlin sang, and she played the music. The two of them worked together seamlessly, as if they were old partners who had rehearsed for a long time. However, that was actually the first time the two of them had performed together, and it was probably also the last time. He and I have quite a good rapport. Su Xiaolan suddenly sighed with emotion. That night, the stars were dazzling, but the sea of white glow sticks was even more dazzling. She had performed with Enlin on the same stage and received the cheers of tens of thousands of people. At that time, she had actually been nervous, but she didn't show it on her face. When the curtain fell and they exited the stage, she felt a sense of security because she was holding Enlin's hand. When will I remember these details? As expected, I've always treasured them. Su Xiaolan thought to herself. The song was melodious, and its power surged through the air. An array formation gradually appeared on the ground, and it emitted a golden light. Complex golden veined patterns slowly formed, and the image of a phoenix was formed on the ground. Su Xiaolan slit her wrist, and what flowed out was not red blood, but golden blood that contained the essence of flames. Enlin's hand was also slit, but there was no blood. His body had already been frozen, and it was extremely hard. Under the guidance of the array formation, Su Xiaolan's golden blood slowly flowed into Enlin's wound, and the sorrowful cry of a phoenix could be faintly heard. The powerful essence of flames attacked the boundless frost in Enlin's body. The warm winter sun would eventually melt the ice and snow. The azure frost energy seemed to have encountered some kind of natural enemy, and it frantically fled through Enlin's body. However, the golden flame energy was everywhere, and it flowed through his entire body, completely eradicating the azure frost energy. The golden essence of flames began to merge into his blood, meridians, consciousness, and energy. Gradually, it completely transformed into Enlin's bloodline, and it emitted a faint light. The warm energy pulled Enlin back from the clutches of the Grim Reaper, and he was no longer cold. Su Xiaolan's face was deathly pale, and she gently caressed Enlin's rosy cheeks as a smile appeared on her face. Her smile was beautiful, but it was also very sad. She placed the flame sealing disc on Enlin's body before pulling out a piece of paper and writing down a line of word. Take the flame sealing disc back to the Vermilion Bird sect, and focus on your cultivation. Don't miss me. A few drops of tears fell from her eyes. Before she knew it, the woman in the jade dress had already burst into tears. In the past, she had countless beautiful dreams for her future. She worked hard for this, and she fought hard for this. She still had many things that she had yet to do, and she still had many dreams that she had yet to fulfill. She even dreamed that one day, she would be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the man beside her and travel the world. But now, all of her dreams were gone. Her wings had been snapped due to the forceful transplanting of her bloodline, her Tao foundation would crumble, and her power would continue to leak out. From then on, she would be reduced to a mortal. The sound of sobbing could be heard within the cave. I'm such a fool. We weren't even Tao partners, but I gave you my bloodline. I'm such a fool. I also wanted to see the scenery of higher and higher places. Why would I sacrifice my own cultivation in order to save you? I'm such a fool. What am I doing? I'm such a fool. I'm such a fool. Su Xiaolan felt like she was going to cry out all of her sorrow, as well as all of her grievances and indignation. She didn't know when, but her lips had already been imprinted onto Enlin's lips, and her tears had soaked her clothes. Love surged like the waves of the ocean, and bitterness and hatred were deeply rooted in her heart. Su Xiaolan had never been so aware of the emotions in her heart before. Enlin, I'm such a fool. So, please forget about this foolish woman, I can't face you anymore. She spoke in a soft voice as she bid her final farewell. She stood atop her dragon sparrow sword and glanced back at the sleeping face before flying into the sky. Our fate has come to an end. From now on we are strangers. Her voice faded into the air, and the frail and dejected figure disappeared into the clouds. Chapter 446. Enlin had a dream. He dreamed that he was walking alone in a boundless world of ice and snow. He was only wearing a pair of underwear, and he was frozen into Dubai. It's so cold, his entire body was struck by the bone-chilling cold, and he was in excruciating pain. Because it was simply too cold, he walked slower and slower until he was frozen on the spot and transformed into an ice sculpture. The cold slowly crawled up his sea of vital energy, solidifying it. In the end, even his consciousness was about to be frozen as well. Everything was drowsy, and it was as if darkness was about to descend into darkness again. Right at this moment, he saw a speck of light. The light wasn't blinding, but it was very attractive. A woman with light emanating from her entire body walked toward him. She was so beautiful, and even her smile was imbued with the power to warm one's heart. Enlin, are you cold? Her concerned voice was like the sound of nature. Enlin really wanted to reply that he was cold, but he was unable to speak. That's right, he was frozen into an ice sculpture. How could he speak? This was a very familiar scene on Earth. He was frozen into an ice sculpture by the system because he was unwilling to give his first kiss to the zombie goddess. He was frozen into an ice sculpture, and he couldn't speak. Even though he couldn't speak at the time, Su Xiaolan insisted on staying with him for several nights and constantly injected her flame energy into the ice to warm him up. This was a very familiar scene, but it was also a little different, because this time Su Xiaolan directly melted the ice that had frozen Enlin. It was a very simple and violent process. Not only that, but Su Xiaolan also gently embraced him in her arms, warming his body. This bliss came too suddenly, and Enlin felt as if he were dreaming. Wah! Celestial Maiden Xiaolan, it's so good to have you here. So warmth flowed through his entire body, making him feel very comfortable. This was an indescribable sense of warmth, and he could no longer feel the terrifying cold. Within a cave on a certain snowy mountain, a man in a deep slumber was murmuring words like Celestial Maiden Xiaolan and so warm. After 4 hours, he slowly woke up from his deep sleep. Enlin opened his eyes and was greeted by the sight of a bumpy rock wall. It was very quiet here, and one could clearly hear the sound of wind and snow coming from outside the cave. Xiaolan? He didn't see Su Xiaolan, so he called out the woman's name. No response. Did something happen to her, so she went out? Enlin was a little confused. But suddenly, he realized that something was wrong. No. I remember that I was severely injured by the power left behind by Qingli. How come my qi and blood are so abundant now that I've woken up? It's like I've completely recovered. He abruptly sat up and touched the part of his body that was heavily injured. It had already scabbed. An item fell from his bosom, along with a piece of white paper. Enlin stared at the object in a daze. Flame-gathering plate? Didn't I give the flame-gathering plate to Su Xiaolan? Why is it on me? He picked up the flame-gathering plate and the piece of white paper. There was a line of elegant words on the piece of paper. Take the flame-gathering plate back to the Vermilion Bird sect and focus on your cultivation. Don't miss me. Enlin's hands trembled lightly, and a sense of emptiness suddenly welled up in his heart. What does this mean? What does it mean? Why does it want me to take the flame-gathering plate back to the Vermilion Bird sect? What about her? Isn't she going back? Why is it telling me not to miss her? He saw that there were still traces of water on the piece of paper, and a sense of fear began to spread through his heart. He also began to sense something strange within his body. The abundant essence of true flames within his body, the incessant flow of flame power fused with his bloodline. How strange, why does he have this kind of power? Xiaolan, what are you doing? Where are you going? He was at a loss for what to do, and he felt as if his heart had been gripped tightly by a large hand. It was as if he was about to face something extremely terrifying, and he felt as if something was blocking his heart. Enlin pulled out his voice transmission talisman and tried to contact Su Xiaolan, only to find that her presence had already been cut off. To put it in simpler terms, he had been blacklisted. There must be another way, there must be another way. Enlin's fingers crushed the rocks on the ground as countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Suddenly, he raised his head, and a hint of color appeared in his eyes. There was a way, the divine simulation technique. This was a spell technique that could be obtained by defeating 2 return-to-void stage enemies in the system mission. It could fuse the power of heaven and earth and use the traces left behind in the surroundings to derive all things in the world. This spell technique was extremely nature-defying, but it was extremely taxing on one's mind, and it couldn't be used continuously. It could only be used once a month at most. Otherwise, it would damage one's body and even consume one's lifespan. Enlin didn't hesitate at all, and he immediately used the divine simulation technique. Countless stars flashed past his eyes, and in the end, his eyes reflected the entire world. In that instant, a colorless ripple spread for over 50 kilometers. He knew everything from the weather and the characteristics of the terrain to the trajectory of every snowflake, the flow and distribution of the minute airflow, and the feedback of every living being. Then, he used these details to begin his derivation. Unlin discovered the bloodstain hidden in the soil in the cave, but that blood didn't belong to him. He discovered the water stain on the white paper, which was made up of tears. He also discovered the new tissue that had regenerated after his wrist was cut open. He also discovered what kind of power was in his body. It was the power of the Divine Phoenix's bloodline green glasses frost poison, the power of the Divine Phoenix's bloodline, the collapse of his Tao foundation in Unlin's mind. The outline of the entire incident slowly became clear. The exhaustive derivation allowed him to understand the ins and outs of the situation. However, his heart felt as if it was being torn apart, and his entire body started to tremble uncontrollably. Why am I worthy of you doing this? Why am I? You're so silly. How can there be a girl as silly as you? Unlin gritted his teeth and clenched his fists tightly. However, there was an inextinguishable determination in his eyes. Xiaolan, didn't you want to escape? I'll catch up to you. No matter where you run to, I'll catch up to you. It wasn't easy for me to pursue a Tao partner, and you're just going to dump me like this without saying a word. Won't I lose face? Unlin took a deep breath and carefully placed the flame sealing disc and the white paper in his pocket. Then, he walked out of the cave. What entered his eyes was a vast expanse of white snow and a boundless, chilly wind. The entire world was barren and monotonous. The divine simulation technique could derive all things in the world, and this naturally included Su Xiaolan's whereabouts. Unlin gazed at the end of the horizon. In that direction was the Wind Plain State. It was the state that connected the Kingdom of the Nine States and the Holy Glacial Lands. Su Xiaolan had flown in that direction. Unlin stepped onto the black brick and rose into the air, flying into the vast expanse of white. Su Xiaolan, you can't get rid of me. No matter where you go, I'll find you. Chapter 447. On a city that stretched for close to 10 kilometers, the city walls were over 100 meters tall, and there were all kinds of vital energy cannons set up on the city walls. The cannons exploded, blasting a series of massive craters into the ground in the distance. One snow maiden after another was torn to shreds by the energy of the explosions. At the same time, tens of thousands of snow maidens transformed the wind and snow into blades and swords, transforming the frosty air between heaven and earth into a fearsome energy that rained down upon the grand city walls and the cultivators atop the city walls. Snowflakes that were dyed red with blood blossomed on the city walls. This city was called Clear Sky City, and it was one of the top 10 cities in the Wind Plain State. Due to its proximity to the Holy Glacial Lands, small-scale battles often broke out here and there with the Snow Maidens. Even though there were many battles, they weren't as serious as the Snow Maidens. However, for some reason, the Snow Maidens seemed to have been provoked recently, and they began to attack the city walls in a frenzy with no regard for their own lives. It was as if they wouldn't rest until they conquered the city. Not only this city, but all of the territories bordering the Holy Glacial Lands in the Wind Plain State were also under heavy attack. Some cities had even fallen. Countless blades of ice and tornadoes roared toward the city before clashing with the flaming arrows and cannons. Clouds of fire and mist blossomed in the air, creating a spectacular sight to behold. Gradually, a section of the city walls began to fall. A soul formation stage Snow Maiden general who possessed an ice crystal domain charged toward the city wall against countless cannon fire and killed several of the city guards there. A gap was opened up, and this section of the city wall was instantly reduced to an icy hell. Countless soldiers were either frozen into ice sculptures or sliced in half by the sweeping blades of ice. Hold on. Delay the Snow Maidens. The general is almost here. A general by the name of Zhong Yi roared. The soldiers unleashed spell techniques to blast away the Snow Maidens who were charging up the city wall. However, the Snow Maidens' defenses were simply too formidable, and the cannons were completely ineffective against her. Not only that, but she could also cast an ice crystal barrier on the Snow Maidens who were fighting alongside her in order to defend against the spell techniques and flames. This was the terrifying power of a soul formation stage cultivator. Just one of them was enough to cause this section of the city wall to bleed, and over 1,000 soldiers were instantly killed. Expressions of despair appeared on many of the soldiers' faces. They weren't afraid of dying in battle, but fighting against this snow maiden was no different from committing suicide. Don't retreat, everyone. As long as we keep attacking, we'll definitely be able to deplete that snow maiden's energy. When the snow maidens are exhausted, we'll definitely be able to kill them. General Zhong Yi continued to yell to boost the morale of his troops. The Snow Lady turned to look at Zhong Yi, who was a few hundred meters away. Her voice was bone-chilling and filled with killing intent. "You talk a lot of nonsense." Bang! The Snow Lady's speed exceeded twice the speed of sound, and she covered the distance of several hundred meters in less than a second. The icy sword in her hand slashed through the air in a deadly arc. Zhong Yi was only of the spirit-nurturing intermediate stage, and he knew that he was going to die in the face of such rapid attacks. However, there was no fear on his face. Instead, he gritted his teeth and prepared to stab the Snow Maiden one last time before he died. As the Snow Lady's sword descended, Zhong Yi's saber also shot upwards. The Snow Lady chuckled coldly in that instant, and she slapped her other wrist downward, upon which an indescribable power sealed General Zhong Yi's saber. Zhong Yi's face was filled with unwillingness. Only now did he realize that the difference in strength was too great. Even if he fought with his life on the line, he might not be able to cause any damage to his opponent. At this moment, the Snow Lady's sword had already descended, and what awaited him was death. Zhong Yi didn't feel any regrets about dying on the city wall. He just hoped that the city wall wouldn't fall. That way, his wife and child would be able to live in this city with peace of mind. Whoosh! The Snow Lady's sword was sliced in half in front of Zhong Yi. The Snow Lady General's eyes widened, and she turned to look at a white-robed male who was wielding a black longsword. A gust of wind emanated from the sword. "You!" The Snow Lady didn't even get a chance to finish her sentence before she discovered that her ice crystal domain had already been shattered, and her body had also been sliced in half. Blue blood splattered through the air. All the soldiers on the city wall, including Zhong Yi, stared at the scene before their eyes in shock. The extremely powerful and fearsome Snow Lady General had been slain by the white-robed male with a single strike? Zhong Yi took a deep breath and bowed respectfully to the white-robed male beside him. "Thank you for your assistance, Senior. The soldiers of Xiangqing City are eternally grateful." "Don't mention it. Let me ask you, did you see a woman in a jade dress flying over this city on her sword today?" The male was none other than Enlin. He looked at Zhong Yi as he spoke. Zhong Yi faltered slightly upon hearing this. Then, he thought about it carefully before shaking his head in disappointment. "Xiangqing City has been embroiled in a fierce battle with the Snow Ladies, but I didn't see any woman flying over the city wall. How about I ask the soldiers guarding the other sections of the city wall after this battle is over?" Enlin shook his head lightly. "There's no need, there's no time. The traces of Su Xiaolan passing through this area would slowly disappear with time. If he wasted any more time, he might not be able to ascertain the direction in which Su Xiaolan had gone." Divine simulation technique. Countless stars flashed past Enlin's eyes, and the entire world was reflected in his eyes. The divine simulation technique could only be used once a month. If it was used too often, it would harm one's body and even reduce one's lifespan. However, Enlin couldn't care less. He didn't have the time to hesitate. He was in a hurry. In that instant, a colorless ripple radiated outward for over 50 kilometers. All of the details of heaven and earth were reflected in his mind, and he began to make predictions. Zhong Yi looked at Enlin, unsure of what he was going to do. However, Zhong Yi, who had a certain level of cultivation base, suddenly discovered that a few strands of white had appeared on Enlin's hair, which was brimming with vitality. "Senior, you." Zhong Yi's eyes widened in shock. He discovered that Enlin's aura was quickly weakening. Enlin didn't say anything. He turned his gaze toward a certain direction before leaping onto his brick and flying away from Xiangqing City. Night began to fall. On the outskirts of Thunder State's cloud-moving city, lightning clouds covered a radius of several hundred kilometers, and vital energy surged in all directions. Violent gale-force winds and explosive lightning flashed in all directions, stirring up heaven and earth. Enlin had lost his sense of direction here. There were very few traces of Su Xiaolan left in this place. He used his divine simulation technique once, but he was still unable to determine her direction. However, he didn't give up. He used his divine simulation technique at several different locations outside of the lightning clouds, and he finally determined his direction. He flew past the myriad-star heavenly lake and saw the reflection of the lake in the sky. This place was very beautiful. He flew past the 1,000-year lofty mountain and gazed at the towering mountain, feeling its majesty. The sky brightened. He flew past the green immortal sea and saw an extremely majestic sea of trees. Thousands of kilometers of plains, thousands of kilometers of lush trees, and as far as the eye could see, the lush green connected with the blue sky, creating an extremely beautiful scene. Using the divine simulation technique again and again made his body unable to bear the burden, and he could only rely on spirit pills and immortal pills to sustain himself. He finally left the Thunder State and arrived at the Gem State. This was a large state in the southwest region of the Kingdom of the Nine State. The fragrance of flowers wafted through the air, and Enlin used his divine simulation technique again. At this moment, half of his black hair had already turned white. Enlin's eyes reflected the heaven and earth. When he activated his divine simulation technique, his body swayed, and he spat out another mouthful of blood. The blood landed on the white flowers, creating an extremely glaring sight. He covered his mouth with his hand and started coughing violently. His body trembled uncontrollably. The speed at which vital energy was repelled, the trajectory of the pollen, the traces left by the wind on the ground. Xiaolan, your cultivation base has already fallen to the spirit-nurturing initial stage. Why are you still running so fast? Why didn't you wait for me? Don't you know how hard it is for me to chase after you? Enlin continued to use his divine simulation technique, and his power became weaker and weaker. His body was also showing signs of collapsing. He grumbled, but he understood that he only had one chance, and he definitely couldn't give it up here. I'm glad you didn't use the main city's teleportation spell formation. Otherwise, I really would be dumbfounded. However, I also understand why you're doing this. Because I've followed you and we've passed by many beautiful places. Don't you want to see more of this world's beautiful scenery before you fall back to being immortal? You're so silly. Just tell me where you want to go. Enlin looked at the sky in the distance, and there was unprecedented determination in his eyes. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and leaped onto his brick again. Chapter 448. Gem State, Xixia City. This was a beautiful ancient city. This ancient city was situated on a plateau. The sky was very clear, and there were no continuous battles. The people were simple and honest. It wasn't a flourishing city, but it was very peaceful. To the west of the city was the endless white sand Gobi Desert. The view was very wide. To the south was a vast expanse of spirit herb plains that constantly emitted spiritual energy to improve the surrounding environment. Furthermore, here, one could see the beautiful sunset every evening. Su Xiaolan strolled along the streets of the ancient city. She chose to spend the rest of her life in this beautiful ancient city. When night fell, she stood on the western city wall and stared blankly at the colorful sunset in the sky. She thought back to the days in the celestial court where she watched the sun sink into the sea of clouds. She thought back to the time when she and Enlin would lie on the soft clouds and chat happily. They also made a promise. When Xiaoxian United University saw the legendary rainbow glow, they would take a photo together as a souvenir. These days passed by just like that. Before she knew it, tears had already blurred the colorful sunset. Su Xiaolan stood on the western city wall and watched the sun sink below the horizon before finding an inn to rest in. Candlelight flickered in the tranquil night. She caressed the beautiful immortal tool, the dragon sparrow sword. Her rank had already fallen to the 7th stage Dao body. At this rate, she would completely become a mortal who couldn't cultivate in another 2 days. Su Xiaolan suddenly realized a problem. If she became immortal, she wouldn't be able to use the storage ring. What would happen to the items inside? What would happen to the dragon sparrow sword? I'm so stupid. I should have left the dragon sparrow sword and the items in the storage ring with Enlin. It's such a waste to keep these things on me. A look of regret appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. However, she quickly shook her head and shook this thought away. She cursed herself for being so useless. Why was she still thinking about that man? She instinctively wanted to meditate, but she discovered that she couldn't draw upon the vital energy of heaven and earth. Only then did she realize that she couldn't cultivate anymore. Su Xiaolan smiled bitterly. She blew out the candlelight and lay on the bed. That night, she couldn't sleep and thought about many things. There were plans for his future life, as well as what to do with the items in his storage ring. The next morning, Su Xiaolan found a relatively good residence in Xixia City. She bought it with spirit stones and hired a few maids. She didn't lack money, and the several 100,000 spirit stones in her storage ring were enough for her to live freely and comfortably for the rest of her life. When she was lonely, she could find a suitable husband to marry and spend the rest of her life as an ordinary woman. No. With this in mind, Su Xiaolan shook her head with a firm expression. For some reason, she was very resistant to this kind of life. She could no longer accept another person in this life. Perhaps it was not a bad idea to spend the rest of her life alone. Su Xiaolan took out the spirit stones from her storage ring and placed them in a certain stone room in the courtyard. As for the other things in the storage ring, she would find an opportunity to deal with them in the future. As she strolled along the street, many passers-by cast sidelong glances at her. Their eyes were filled with curiosity and admiration. Anyone would take a few more glances at the sudden appearance of an elegant and refined beauty in the ancient city. Su Xiaolan was already used to these gazes, so she didn't feel any aversion to them. She was just thinking about how she should find a proper job. Although she was rich, she couldn't just sit around and do nothing for the rest of her life. She quickly decided what she wanted to do next. Open a medical center. Su Xiaolan was already very proficient in pill refinement. She was a pill refinement master of the soul creation stage, so she could be said to be a grandmaster in the field of pill refinement. Even though she couldn't use vital energy, she could still use her vast theoretical knowledge to treat illnesses and prescribe medicine, thereby helping the people in the city who were suffering from illnesses. To the south of Xixia City, there was a spirit herb plain that stretched for thousands of kilometers. There were countless types of medicinal ingredients there, so she could do some research when she was bored. This would make her life less boring. There was another reason why she chose this profession, and that was because she wanted to use her superb medical skills to gain a certain amount of reputation and favor in the city. This way, she wouldn't be bullied by other forces. She was very clear about her current situation. She was no longer the prodigy of the Vermilion Bird sect. Right now, she was only a very beautiful mortal woman. She was a mortal woman who was completely defenseless against external forces. Thus, under these circumstances, she had to learn how to protect herself. Opening a medical center in this ancient city could help a lot of people. From another perspective, the people she helped were her umbrella of protection. Su Xiaolan's current cultivation base had already fallen to the 2nd stage Dao body, so her perception of her surroundings gradually became duller. The images that were originally very clear became a little blurry. Her body, which was originally filled with blood and energy, now also felt weak and powerless. She knew that this was the discomfort brought about by the loss of energy. She would probably get used to it after a while. She would definitely get used to it. Su Xiaolan bought a large shop and renovated it into a medical center. The people in the city quickly found out that there was a female doctor who was going to open a relatively large medical center in a relatively prosperous area of the city. Apparently, she came from the capital city and was very skilled in medicine. After taking care of matters regarding the medical center, it was already evening again. The sky was still filled with the glow of the sunset. Su Xiaolan didn't go to the western city wall to look at the sunset anymore. If she looked at it now, her heart would still ache. She believed that as time passed, this feeling would fade away. She would continue living an ordinary and happy life in this city. Another day passed. Su Xiaolan woke up from her sleep. Sunlight shone through the window and illuminated the room, bringing with it a hint of warmth. She sat up from the bed with some difficulty. Her slender fingers clenched into fists before slowly unclenching them. There was no strength in her fist. They were soft and weak. Who would have thought that this would be the feeling of becoming an ordinary person? Su Xiaolan smiled. There wasn't much light in her eyes and they gradually dimmed. She walked toward the medical center and began to instruct the servants to prepare the stock of medicinal ingredients. The weather wasn't very hot, and she didn't do any hard labor. However, she was so busy that she was drenched in sweat and felt extremely exhausted. After a busy day of preparing the medicinal ingredients, the sun gradually set in the west. There were red and purple rays of light in the sky, making it look exceptionally beautiful. Su Xiaolan dragged her exhausted body back to her courtyard. The afterglow of the setting sun shone upon her body, elongating her shadow into a long shadow. She was still thinking about her plans for tomorrow. She was a very busy person. She didn't have time to think about other things, and she didn't have time to sigh about her own life. Stepping on the bluestone bricks of the ancient city, Su Xiaolan couldn't help but look at the sky in the distance. The clouds were as beautiful as a painting. So beautiful, she softly whispered. Her body was covered in the faint yellow color of dusk, making her feel particularly lonely. Seeing such a beautiful scene, she didn't have the mood to appreciate it. Su Xiaolan turned her gaze back to the street and saw a man standing not far away. She stopped walking and stared at that man in a daze. The figure looked like that person, but his hair was white. She felt that she must have been hallucinating because she missed him too much. She couldn't help but shake her head with a bitter smile and continue walking forward. That man stood quietly on the street, staring at the green-clothed woman walking toward him. Su Xiaolan finally saw that man's face clearly. Her footsteps stopped again, and she couldn't take another step forward. That familiar silhouette. That appearance that she tried very hard to forget, but she couldn't forget no matter what. The two of them stood on the street of the ancient city and looked at each other. They hadn't seen each other for several days. They met again. One had already become immortal, while the other's hair was as white as snow. Chapter 449. Xixia City. Dusk gradually deepened. Red and purple lights intertwined, creating a scene that seemed both real and illusory, like a painting yet not a painting. The dusk that was gradually losing its splendor enveloped the two people gazing at each other on the street, like an ancient and meaningful painting. Unlin looked at the green-clothed woman before him. Her lithe and exquisite figure, her elegant and refined features, her bright and clear eyes, and her delicate lips that were as pink as peach blossoms. Everything was so beautiful, however, there was a kind of pride that had seeped into her bones that had already disappeared. In order to save him, this woman had already become immortal. She no longer had the right to be proud. She had already completely become a mortal who could not cultivate. Even though Enlin had already deduced all of this using the divine simulation technique, his mind still went completely blank when he saw Su Xiaolan's appearance with his own eyes. He felt as if his heart was being torn apart. He moved his lips and discovered that something was stuck in his throat. Su Xiaolan stared blankly at the man in front of her. His white hair was reflected in her eyes. Even though she no longer had any power, even though she was just a mortal, there was one thing that hadn't changed, and that was her heart. She couldn't help but ask, "Unlin, what happened to your hair? Is it okay?" Unlin shook his head and gazed deeply at Su Xiaolan. However, his voice was trembling slightly as he said, "After you left me, I couldn't care about anything else. My only thought was to catch up to you and find you. I was really scared at the time. I was scared that you would disappear from my life just like that. I used the divine simulation technique to track you down, but you ran too fast. I was scared that your trail would disappear. I didn't have time, so I could only use the divine simulation technique again and again. I crossed countless snowy mountains and chased you from the holy glacial lands to the kingdom of the 9 states. I passed by the true dragon lightning pit, the myriad star heavenly lake, the 1,000 autumns lofty mountain, the green immortal sea, the demonic flower garden. I walked through all of the scenery that you had been to. But in the end, I discovered that I couldn't use the divine simulation technique anymore. Every time I used the divine simulation technique, I would vomit blood, my heart would spasm, and I would almost faint. At that time, I was really panicked and scared. I followed your trail like a madman and searched every city. I never thought that I would miss you like this in this life. I won't allow it. If you run into trouble and no one can help you, what will you do? What would you do if you were lonely and had no one to accompany you? You're so pretty. What would you do if some blind villain bullied you? I just want to be by your side as soon as possible. I can't wait for even a second. Fortunately, the heavens have mercy on us. We met each other so soon, although Enlin's white hair fluttered in the wind and he had the demeanor of an expert, his eyes were now red. Like a stubborn child, he continued to speak to the green-clothed woman in front of him. Su Xiaolan, I can't live without you. In my heart, you are my Tao companion for life. On the street at dusk, the frail green-clothed woman's face was already covered in tears. At this moment, a gentle breeze blew past. Su Xiaolan's delicate and soft body was embraced by Enlin, who hugged her tightly. Xiaolan, I like you. I've liked you since a very, very long time ago. So promise me, be my Tao companion, Enlin said in a gentle voice. Su Xiaolan's body trembled slightly as she shook her head with tears in her eyes. No, I'm immortal now. The path of immortals and mortals are different. I'll soon grow old, and my face will be covered in wrinkles. My body will become weaker and weaker. In the end, I'll turn into dust in front of you. I'm not worthy of you. Enlin's heart softened as he inhaled the faint fragrance of the woman in his arms. You're so silly. The path of immortals and mortals are all **t. If we really want to compare age, I've expended so much of my lifespan, and there's a possibility that my lifespan will be even shorter than yours. Also, if we're comparing whose hair turns white first, I've already won. Su Xiaolan's heart shuddered upon hearing this, and she buried her head into Enlin's shoulder with a guilty and reproachful expression. You shouldn't have come. You shouldn't have paid such a heavy price to come here. I've already planned to forget about you and start a new life. I don't know anything now and I'm nothing. Why did you come to find me? It's not worth it. Can you stop saying things like you're not worthy of me or not worthy of me? If it weren't for you, I'd already be dead by now. I've seen many beautiful women, such as Chang Yi and Su Qianyun. Even though they're prettier than you. Enlin suddenly felt that his back was a little tight, and he immediately sped up. But if they fall into the river at the same time as you, I'll definitely save you first, because in my heart, they can't even compare to a single strand of your hair. Furthermore, your disposition is many times better than theirs. That's the disposition of Enlin's Tao companion. Su Xiaolan sniffled. You're still not being serious even at a time like this. We can talk about being serious, but when are we getting married? Enlin asked. Su Xiaolan. She gently pushed Enlin away and wiped away the tears on her face. Her eyes were still shimmering with tears, making her appear even more alluring. Her frail body stood in the light of the setting sun, making her appear even more pitiful. So what if you're immortal? I'll live with you, grow old with you, and take you wherever you want to go. We'll eat all of the delicious food in the world. Enlin was a little scared and panicked, but he was trying his best to convince Enlin. Furthermore, it's not like there's no hope for your Tao foundation to recover, he continued. Su Xiaolan shook her head with a forlorn expression. That's impossible. I've never heard of anyone being able to recover a collapsed Tao foundation. Even if one's spirit root withered and their sea of vital energy dried up, it wouldn't be as severe as a collapsed Tao foundation. There's nothing that's impossible in this world. Don't you believe me? Enlin looked deeply into Su Xiaolan's eyes with an extremely determined expression. When we were surrounded by the 5 Return to Void stage snow maidens, did you think there was a chance that we could survive? When you left me alone, did you think there was a chance that I could find you again? Su Xiaolan looked up at Enlin and moved her lips, but she didn't say anything. Enlin continued, that's why I say, I'm a man who can create miracles. Su Xiaolan was a little speechless. She discovered that Enlin was indeed a man who could create many miracles. He was an incredible man. If there really was a chance for her to soar through the sky again, how could she be willing to give up on it? Enlin was a little uneasy upon seeing the change in Su Xiaolan's expression, but he had already seen a glimmer of hope. So, speaking of which, there's still something that we haven't taken care of, Enlin suddenly said. Su Xiaolan raised her head with a perplexed and curious expression on her face. Enlin looked at the woman before him with a serious expression. Su Xiaolan, are you willing to become my Tao partner? I want to walk down this path with you. The two of them looked at each other in silence again. The afterglow of the setting sun, the drifting clouds, the streets of the ancient city, and the occasional cry of a falcon. None of this could conceal the thumping of their hearts. A vibrant smile appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. In that instant, even the colorful clouds in the sky paled in comparison. She was the epitome of all the beauty in this world. Enlin stared at the woman before him in a daze. He felt like he would never forget this smile, no matter how many tens of thousands of years passed. The woman in the jade dress approached Enlin and stood on her toes. She raised her beautiful face and closed her eyes before kissing him lovingly. Their soft lips touched, and the two of them embraced once again. In that instant the scene became eternal. Chapter 450. Their shadows were elongated by the setting sun. Enlin could feel Su Xiaolan's soft, moist lips, and a feeling of bliss welled up in his heart. If he had to describe it, he would say it was a little sweet. If he had to describe it, then he would say it was sweet to the heart, and he was completely intoxicated by it. Neither of them had any experience kissing, so the kiss only lasted for a short while before they parted shyly. Su Xiaolan lowered her head, and a faint blush appeared on her face, making her look even more beautiful than the sunset. Xiaolan, this feels like a dream. I didn't think you would really become my Tao partner. I must have saved the world in my past life. Enlin smiled blissfully as he stared at Su Xiaolan's beautiful features. Tao partner? What Tao partner? Su Xiaolan blinked her bright eyes. Enlin faltered slightly before asking nervously, You kissed me just then. Wasn't that what you meant? Su Xiaolan shook her head with a serious expression. No, it was just a reward for your sincerity. Boom. Enlin felt as if he had been struck by lightning, and he was rooted to the spot in a daze. The sky had collapsed. Was I rejected? I finally got to be brave for once, but I still have to fight over dog food with Dabai? Su Xiaolan pursed her lips at the sight of Enlin's dazed expression. Other people offer flowers and rings when they propose. You're a cultivator, yet you don't get anything when you ask someone to become your Tao partner? Are you trying to get something for yourself? Enlin's eyes instantly lit up upon hearing this. So that's what she meant. He immediately pulled out all the good stuff from his storage ring. Xiaolan, this is an immortal tool, realm-piercing nail. This is the shield of promised victory. This is an ancient artifact, the heart of the ocean. It looks really pretty on you. This is the first-grade immortal herb, serene grass. It can help with beautification. Anlin thought for a moment before pulling out the frying pan. This cooks really well. You can have it as well. Su Xiaolan. She shook her head. That's not what I meant. I was just joking. Anlin felt as if he had been dealt another heavy blow, and his heart was filled with panic and disappointment as he stared blankly at Su Xiaolan. A radiant smile appeared on Su Xiaolan's face at the sight of Anlin's dazed expression. I'm not rejecting you. I mean, it's too early to be Dao partners. I need to set a probation period. Like Dongfang Ming and Shen, a period of 100 years. If we still in love in 100 years, we'll become Dao partners. Her soft, pleasant voice reverberated through the streets and flowed into Anlin's heart. Anlin faltered for a few seconds before replying with a smile. All right, then 100 years it is. I'll be sure to give you a satisfactory answer. Su Xiaolan smiled like a flower and nodded lightly. Yes, I believe you. How could Anlin not know what Su Xiaolan was thinking? A mortal's lifespan was only about 100 years. In a period of 100 years, there were only two outcomes for Su Xiaolan. She would either perish and turn into a pile of dirt. If she could cultivate again, she would be able to become Dao companions with Anlin with peace of mind. Anlin didn't mind Su Xiaolan's insistence, because no matter what happened in the next 100 years, he would always be by her side. The sun had already sunk into the horizon, and there was still a faint afterglow in the Gobi Desert in the west. Stars were already hanging high in the night sky, decorating the night. The scenery of Xixia City, where the sun and the moon alternated, was also extraordinarily beautiful. Su Xiaolan had been here for a few days, but she hadn't had the chance to enjoy such a beautiful scenery. Only now did she truly have the heart to appreciate the beauty of Xixia City. Not with sorrow, but with joy. Such scenery was truly beautiful. She held on to Anlin's hand, and their footsteps were light as they slowly made their way back to their own courtyard. The warmth of his palm made her feel at ease. Su Xiaolan gazed at the beautiful colors in the sky and smiled faintly. She had finally fallen in love with this ancient city, because a person who had reappeared in her life had fallen in love with Xixia City. Anlin arrived at the courtyard that Su Xiaolan had just purchased. It looked quite nice. He saw the words Lan Lin Courtyard on the signboard above the main gate. It seemed to have just been hung there. Su Xiaolan blushed slightly when she saw Anlin's gaze. She hurriedly pulled Anlin into the courtyard. Master, you're back. I've just finished making 4 dishes. We have a guest. Would you like to add a little more? A young girl with delicate features walked up to them shyly. She was slightly taken aback when she saw Su Xiaolan holding onto Anlin's hand. No need. Little Chiu, you can go now, Su Xiaolan said with a smile. The young girl was slightly taken aback again. Then, she nodded and bowed. Yes, master. The young girl retreated and came to the courtyard's corridor. She gathered with the other 3 young girls. Su Xiaolan had recruited a total of 4 maidservants in this courtyard. Their average age was around 16 years old. They were all young girls from poor families. Their characters and appearances were all quite good. Perhaps she had been infected by Anlin, but Su Xiaolan had also randomly given her maidservants pet names. She named them Little Chun, Little Xia, Little Chiu, and Little Dong. However, this was still better than the maidservants' original names. After all, the original maidservants' names were Lu Chuanyang and Ma Dongmei. They were all very unsophisticated. Little Chiu arrived beside the other 3 maidservants. Her eyes were filled with shock and excitement. Little Chiu, who is that man? What's his relationship with Master? He has fluttering white hair and a handsome face. It's obvious that he's an extraordinarily powerful elite. Little Chun was the first to speak with stars in her eyes. Little Chiu shook her head. I don't know either. Judging from how close they are, He should be Master's partners, right? Little Xia was also very excited. I think so too. Master has been depressed for the past 2 days. However, Master's radiance has been restored after that young man arrived. This is the first time I've seen Master smile. Master is so beautiful. Only a man with such a disposition would be worthy of her. Little Dong nodded emphatically. Little Xia looked on as Enlin walked into the courtyard. A thought suddenly occurred to her, and she exclaimed in surprise, fluttering white hair as graceful as jade. Hey, do you think that young man is Jiang Yanan of the Purple Star State? The other 3 maidservants faltered upon hearing this. They were born into poverty, and one of the few hobbies they had was to read the Kingdom of the 9 States magazine. They wanted to see the interesting stories and legendary figures within. They would subscribe to every issue of the Kingdom of the 9 States magazine. They were naturally no strangers to the thunderous name of Jiang Yanan. That can't be. We know that Master is very good, but Jiang Yanan is the #1 sword prodigy in the Purple Star State. He's a top-notch immortal renowned throughout the Kingdom of the 9 State. Why would he come to such a secluded place and be with a mortal? Little Chun shook her head, clearly disagreeing with this conjecture. That's right. Don't just think of Jiang Yanan as soon as you see a handsome young man with fluttering white hair. Do you think it's so easy to meet a legendary sword immortal? Little Chiu also glared at Little Xia. Little Xia pouted. Even if he's not Jiang Yanan, he must still be very powerful. Look at how graceful he is. Even when he walks, he's so handsome. He must be a powerful immortal. Then why don't we go to the dining hall and see who that young man is? It's part of the maidservant's duty to wait in the guest room anyway. A gossipy expression appeared on Little Dong's face. The eyes of the 4 maidservants all lit up, and they immediately made their way toward the guest room. Chapter 451. The 4 maids walked into the room and stood quietly by the door, waiting for orders. Their big, watery eyes secretly looked at the 2 people sitting down. Enlin and Su Xiaolan sat across from each other at a small table, completely ignoring the 4 unruly maids. You must be tired from your long journey. Why don't you eat something? Su Xiaolan looked at the dishes on the table with a smile. Enlin immediately came to his senses at the sight of the food. Why are you eating this? I'll cook some noodles for you. Su Xiaolan faltered slightly upon hearing this before a faint smile appeared on her face. Sure. Enlin nodded before waving a hand toward one of the maids in the room. Little Chiu, take away all of the dishes on the table. The delicate and pretty maid faltered momentarily before coming to her senses. All right. Little Chiu was a little confused as she took away all of the dishes on the table. What kind of noodles did that young master mean? Did he really have to cook noodles in the kitchen? There were so many delicious dishes out there, so why did he have to eat noodles? Little Chun, who was responsible for cooking, looked on with a pained expression at the sight of the dishes being taken away. She had worked so hard to make all of these dishes, and they were the fruits of her labor. She felt as if all of her hard work had been fed to a dog without even eating a single bite. The slightly older Little Dong wore a thoughtful expression. Perhaps this was a way for that young master to express his feelings. Perhaps eating food cooked by someone he liked was more romantic? Little Xia blinked as she considered whether she should start a fire in the kitchen first. Then, they saw the white-haired man bring out a frying pan, as well as a bunch of condiments. He set up a rack on the ground and began to cook noodles on the spot. The 4 seasons. He was cooking noodles on the ground? They felt like they were going blind. Little Chiu, bring the noodles and eggs over. Enlin yelled again. Huh? Little Chiu ran into the kitchen with a confused expression again. Enlin used a water-gathering spell technique to add water before using his divine flame to boil the water. He then added the noodles, seasoning, and smashed 2 eggs before tossing them into the pot. After that, he stirred and stirred and stirred. It appeared to be an extremely casual process. The 4 little maids were mesmerized by what they saw. At least it's edible, Xiao Xia said. Yes, it can be eaten even when it's cooked. As long as master likes it, it's fine, Little Dong said woodenly. Ugh! The dishes that I've meticulously prepared can't even compare to this kind of noodles. Tears welled up in Xiaochun's eyes. When she saw the dishes that were left to the side, she felt as if her heart was stabbed by a sword again. The soup was boiling hot, and white smoke lingered in the air. Then, spring, summer, autumn, and winter realized they were wrong. My God, this smell! Xiao Xia inhaled deeply with an intoxicated look on her face. Could it be coming from this side? How can a bowl of noodles have such a fragrance? Xiaodong was also in disbelief. Little Chiu smelled this fragrant aroma, and she understood what was going on. Meanwhile, Xiaochun was filled with shame and admiration. She was ashamed that she had slandered this side of the noodles, and she was in admiration of this man's terrifying cooking skills. She stared at the handsome white-haired man with reverence and fanaticism in her eyes. She felt like this was the legendary cooking skills of a man who had attained the Tao of heaven and earth. Although each and every one of his actions was ordinary, they had already reached a level of simplicity. The aroma was far too alluring. The four maids stared at the noodles, and they did their best to suppress their urge to pounce on it. The most painful thing in life was having supremely delicious food placed in front of you, yet you could only smell it, but you couldn't eat it. Enlin finished cooking the noodles, and he ladled a large bowl for Su Xiaolan before placing it in front of her. He then ladled a bowl for himself with a smile on his face. Hurry up and eat. This noodles is absolutely delicious, so eat it while it's hot. Su Xiaolan looked at Enlin with a teary expression in her eyes. She nodded with a smile. The egg noodles looked extremely bright on the outside. The egg white had been melted into a fresh broth, and the egg yolk had perfectly blended into the gluten. It appeared to be shimmering gold, and it tasted even more delicious and juicy. The two of them ate the egg noodles with contentment on their faces. They chatted about the interesting things that had happened in the Celestial Court, and they also talked about the plans of Xixia City. It was a joyous and harmonious atmosphere, and they looked just like a young couple. The four poor maids could only stand in the room, unable to do anything. They could only smell the extremely alluring fragrance of the noodles as they chatted with the two of them. Rumble, Little Chiu's stomach began to rumble. She looked at the long-haired woman beside her with a pitiful expression. Big Sister Dong, I'm hungry. Little Dong consoled her in a gentle voice. It's all right. There's enough noodles in the pot for 4 people. After Master and that young master finish eating, we'll clean up the leftovers, and we'll be able to eat the leftovers. Little Chun and Little Xia's eyes also lit up upon hearing this. It was as if color had returned to their lives. At this moment, Enlin and Su Xiaolan had already finished the egg noodles in their bowls. Then, Enlin picked up the frying pan and picked up all of the noodles before filling their bowls to the brim. He didn't even spare the broth as he poured all of the broth into the big bowl. The frying pan was now completely empty. The 4 seasons. Enlin looked at Su Xiaolan with a joyful expression. Can you still eat? A warm smile appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. I can eat anything you cook. Besides, it's super delicious. Haha, as long as you like it, I'll cook for you every day. New dishes every day. Enlin grinned like a child who weighed over 100 kilograms upon receiving the compliment. The two of them continued to flirt with one another. The 4 seasons had tears streaming down their faces. What the F***ck was going on? Doesn't Master usually only eat 1 bowl of rice at most? How can she eat 2 big bowls of noodles now? Little Chiu pouted with tears in her eyes. This is the power of food. You can eat more if it's delicious. Little Chun looked at the empty frying pan with an indignant expression. She wanted to lick it to see what it tasted like. This is also the power of love, Little Dong explained with a serious expression. The other 3 maids nodded in agreement. The super delicious and alluring egg noodles, the loving conversation between the two of them, The 4 maidservants of spring, summer, autumn, and winter felt that not only were their stomachs extremely uncomfortable, but their hearts were also abnormally empty. This was the most painful thing in life. It wasn't like having supremely delicious food placed in front of you, but you could only smell it, but you couldn't eat it. Not only was there supremely delicious food placed in front of you, but you could only smell it, but you couldn't eat it. On top of that, you had to be fed dog food over and over again. The 4 maids had never experienced such a heavy blow before, and all of them were in a daze. Lin and Su Xiaolan slowly finished the noodles in their bowls, and even drank all the soup in their bowls. It couldn't be helped, the egg noodles were far too delicious. Both of them could see the unsatiated expressions on each other's faces, and they couldn't help but smile at one another. An ambiguous and blissful atmosphere permeated through the room. Su Xiaolan stared at Lin and suddenly stretched out a finger to stroke his white hair with a sympathetic expression. "You're so silly. I've never seen a man as silly as you." Lin pinched Su Xiaolan's cheek with a smile. "I've never seen a woman as silly as you either. We're both silly, so we make a perfect pair." Su Xiaolan burst into laughter. "How shameless!" Lin sighed with emotion. "We really are a husband and wife in need." A faint smile appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. "You're wrong. Don't take advantage of me. How are we husband and wife?" Lin nodded in agreement. "No, we're Dao companions in need." Su Xiaolan, The 4 Seasons. Bert. Chapter 452. After finishing their meal, Lin and Su Xiaolan walked toward the courtyard with satisfied expressions on their faces. The 4 maids felt as if they had been pardoned from a great sin. They had been fed dog food to their heart's content, and now they could finally eat better food. "Big Sister Dong it looks like that young man really is Master's Dao partner," Little Chiu said enviously. As a relationship expert, Little Dong nodded before shaking her head. They should be Dao partners to be. Both of them have feelings for each other, but they haven't confirmed their relationship yet. That's so complicated. Anyway, that man is going to live here from now on, right? Little Xia pouted. She only wanted to serve Su Xiaolan, so she was not used to the sudden addition of a man. "That young man is probably going to be our male master from now on." Xiao Chun blushed and said softly, listening to their conversation, "Both of them are actually students of the heavenly court. How impressive! Who would have thought that our master is also a powerful cultivator? No wonder our male master's cooking skills are so good. He's an immortal." Immortals are also divided into different levels. What stage of Dao body? How many stages can that young man be? Little Xia pursed her lips. To be able to study in the celestial court, he has to be at least at the 6th or 7th stage. Little Dong speculated objectively. Didn't you guys hear Master call that young man Lin? Could he be that Lin from the 9 States magazine? Little Chiu asked weakly. All the maids instantly fell silent upon hearing this. They recalled that Master had indeed called that young man by his full name. His name was Lin. However, they did not associate this name with that legendary figure from the 9 States magazine. After all, this person was too far away from them. If it weren't for the fact that Lin had white hair, they would not have jokingly associated him with Jiang Yanan. Now that they thought about it, they were both called Lin, and they were both students of the Celestial Court. What a terrifying thought! Lin, who won the championship of the Dao Exchange Conference of the 4 Powers for Celestial Court University, is right in front of us? Little Xia took a deep breath and spoke with a shocked expression. Lin, the #1 legend of Xiuxian United University, is right in front of us? Little Chun was also shocked. That's not right. Rumor has it that Lin is a black-haired man who likes to ride dogs. He's not a white-haired man. The rational Xiaodong came back to his senses and began to question. Are you stupid? It's a trend among immortals to dye their hair white now. It's very normal, okay? Little Chun retorted with an excited expression. Her admiration for Enlin had reached a whole new level. Her bright eyes flickered incessantly, containing a different kind of brilliance. Xiao Xia and Xiao Qiu nodded repeatedly as they glanced at the two people in the courtyard under the moonlight. Their faces were filled with envy. Enlin and Su Xiaolan sat side by side on a wooden bench in the pavilion, looking up at the bright moon. "Are you really not going to return to the Vermilion Bird sect? Your second uncle is a Dao integration stage mighty figure, and Grand Elder Sidufeng is a veteran Dao integration stage mighty figure. With the power they wield, perhaps they really might be able to find a solution." Enlin looked at the beautiful woman beside him, who was enshrouded in moonlight. Su Xiaolan shook her head with a firm expression. "Shen Yin is a Dao integration stage mighty figure to begin with. Her understanding of bloodline transplants is unparalleled in this world, and no one is more knowledgeable than her about the destruction of one's Dao foundation due to bloodline transplants. I have inherited her knowledge, so I know that this is an irreversible destruction, and there is no possibility of recovery. Of course, I also know that my second uncle and grand elder are extremely powerful. Perhaps there really is a sliver of a chance that they can find a way to help me, but they will have to pay an unimaginable price." She suddenly turned to Enlin. "The destruction of one's Dao foundation and the severing of one's cultivation path. It's just like death, and it's irreversible. Would you allow your family to go bankrupt in order to fight for that sliver of a chance? My second uncle owes my mother a huge favor, and he might even sacrifice his life for her, but I don't want to. I don't want them to go to such lengths for me, and I don't want others to know about my situation. I don't need this." Enlin fell silent as he encircled his arms around her slender waist. Su Xiaolan's body trembled slightly, but she didn't resist. Instead, she rested her head on Enlin's shoulder, and tears welled up in her eyes. "Do you think I'm a little unreasonable?" Enlin shook his head. "No, I would make the same choice as you. Is it because we're both stupid?" Su Xiaolan asked. Enlin. He looked at the woman before him, who was becoming more and more alluring under the moonlight. "The moon is so beautiful tonight." I know, but why are you moving your mouth closer to mine?" Su Xiaolan pushed Enlin's head away with a perplexed expression. Enlin blinked with an aggrieved and dumbstruck expression. "Is there something wrong with my posture? Can someone tell me what to do now?" Let's talk about the medical center. This medical center can be open to all residents in the city. You have a solid theoretical foundation, so I can refine some simple pills under your guidance. That way, my pill refinement skills will improve, and my business will flourish. Isn't that great? Enlin expressed his thoughts. Su Xiaolan looked at the man in front of her, who was seriously discussing their future life, with a tender expression in her eyes. That night passed in a very serious manner. Enlin woke up in the morning and pulled out his voice transmission talisman from his storage ring, only to find that there were over 100 people trying to contact him. Almost everyone who had the communication method of both sides had tried to contact him. Could it be that the information had already spread? At the time, he was pursuing Su Xiaolan, so he couldn't care less about anything else. Only now did he realize that so many people were worried about him, and he was a little touched. Su Xiaolan had already burned her own voice transmission talisman, so she didn't want to contact anyone. Enlin understood how Su Xiaolan was feeling, and he felt like it was best not to tell anyone about this. He could just tell his beast pets about the situation. He thought about it for a moment before deciding to send a voice transmission to Dubai first. The voice transmission talisman was instantly picked up, and Dubai's sorrowful voice sounded. "Wah! Did you really find Big Brother Anne's belongings? Which B***tch did this? I'm going to tear her to shreds. Woof." Enlin was a little touched, and he explained, "Dubai, the voice transmission talisman can't be used unless it's the owner of the voice transmission talisman." The other end of the voice transmission talisman fell silent, as if it had been frightened. An excited roar then sounded, "Woof woof! Big Brother and wah! Big Brother and isn't dead! Woof woof!" The excited voices of Xiao Hong and Xiao Chou sounded from the other end of the voice transmission talisman. "Wah! I told you Big Brother and was blessed by the heavens. How could he be killed by a few snow maidens?" Xiao Chou's sobbing voice sounded. "My prayers to the sun must have worked. We can continue to eat stuffed buns ignored by Dabai in the future." Xiao Hong's joyful voice sounded from the other end. "And egg fried rice," Dabai added. "And all kinds of new dishes," Xiao Chou added. "Yay!" Xiao Hong was elated. Anlin, as expected, he had raised a bunch of fake beast pets. Chapter 453. Big Brotherin, I was scared to death when I heard that you and Xiaolan were missing. Woof. I heard from the great elder of the Vermilion Bird sect that they had used their great divination technique and deduced that you and Su Xiaolan had encountered 5 Holy Palace leaders and had come into contact with the Holy Flame. The probability of your survival was less than 10%. They also said that a mysterious mighty figure had suddenly appeared and slain the 5 Holy Palace leaders before stealing the Holy Flame. Woof. Dabai's enraged voice sounded from the other side of the voice transmission talisman. Anlin's lips twitched slightly. That great divination technique was a fake, right? However, on second thought, this kind of deduction was a little too close. After all, this was the most reasonable explanation. Speaking of divination, he immediately thought of his divine simulation technique. He didn't know how much of his lifespan he had expended, but his hair was now completely white. He had to eat more immortal pills to replenish his vitality. Anlin thought for a moment before speaking to Dabai. 2 things. First, you have to keep everything about me a secret. You can't tell anyone else. Second, you have to find an excuse to leave the Vermilion Bird sect and come to Xixia City. I'll be waiting for you there. Alright, I'll definitely be there in 2 days, woof. Dabai agreed readily before ending the voice transmission. Anlin heaved a light sigh of relief. He had to find an opportunity to return the flame sealing disc to the Vermilion Bird sect. He could leave this mission to the Beast Pet team. It was also time to deal with the matter of Su Xiaolan's Dao Foundation collapsing. Although the chances were slim, Anlin definitely wouldn't give up hope. He would do everything in his power to find a solution. Anlin didn't know many mighty figures at the moment. Aside from Daolord Luya, who he had never met before, he was probably only familiar with Vice Principal Yuhua University, Palace Leader Chang Yi of the Moon Palace, and Yi Shi of the Do Shui Palace. Among the 3 of them, Chang Yi was the #1 pill refinement master of the Celestial Court. Even though her cultivation base was only at the Return to Void pinnacle stage, her pill refinement and life-saving skills were superior to most Dao integration stage mighty figures. Anlin thought for a moment and decided to call Chang'e first. He found that during the time he disappeared, Chang'e also tried to contact him through the sound-transmitting talisman, which proved that Chang'e still regarded him as a friend in her heart. This made him feel less nervous when he called the sound-transmitting talisman. Anlin? The voice transmission talisman was quickly connected, and Chang Yi's cold voice came through. Anlin replied, "Yes, it's me. How's Sister Chang Yi recently?" Chang Yi smiled. "I should be the one asking you that. I heard you died." Anlin. "As you can see, those are all rumors. However, I hope you can help me keep the fact that I'm still alive a secret." "Alright, tell me, what do you need me for?" Chang Yi was very straightforward. Anlin thought for a moment before replying, "Do you have a way to help someone with a collapsed Dao Foundation to cultivate again?" As for the reason for the collapse of the Dao Foundation, it was due to a bloodline transplant. That person has already been reduced to a mortal. Chang Yi fell silent for a long time. "In the Kingdom of the 9 States, I've never heard of anyone being able to cultivate again after having a collapsed Dao Foundation," Chang Yi said. A look of disappointment appeared on Anlin's face upon hearing this. However, just because I've never heard of it doesn't mean that it's impossible, Chang-yi continued. Lin's heart jolted upon hearing this, and his eyes lit up. However, I won't be able to do it, Chang-yi said in the end. Lin, can you tell me everything in one go? My heart really hurts. Lin clasped a hand over his heart. The collapse of a Tao foundation is like the dissipation of a person's consciousness. There's no way to find a trace of it. To reconstruct a Tao foundation is even more difficult than reconstructing a dissipated consciousness. It's impossible unless you have the ability to transcend the heavens. To put it bluntly, even if you ask the celestial Dharch, he won't be able to do anything. In this regard, I'm more powerful than him. Chang-yi sighed before continuing, and Lin's heart was instantly filled with disappointment upon hearing this. He was planning to shamelessly ask Emperor Ziwei if he really had no idea what to do, then ask the celestial Dharch through Lin Junjun. Now that he heard Chang-yi's words, he was feeling a little sad. However, he still wasn't going to give up. The person you're talking about is Su Xiaolan, right? Chang-yi suddenly asked. And Lin fell silent. Don't be too nervous. From the events that unfolded after the Battle of the Snow Maidens, as well as what you've asked me, I can deduce some things. Chang-yi's cold voice suddenly became a little gentle as she said, She's a very good girl. You can't let her down. I won't give up. No matter what price I have to pay, I won't give up. And Lin clenched his fists as he spoke in an extremely firm voice. All right, I'll keep this a secret for you. Also, I'll ask other people for you to see if they have any ideas. I'll contact you again if I have any, Chang-yi said. Thank you so much. Lin was extremely touched upon hearing this. He knew just how powerful Chang-yi's network was. She had a lot of influence on the entire continent. Although Chang-yi was a shut-in, her pill refinement skills were top-notch. Some Tao integration stage mighty figures would even ask her to refine pills for them. Many people were indebted to her, and if she really did ask her questions, she would definitely be able to obtain a lot of confidential information. And Lin silently committed this favor to memory. After expressing his gratitude over and over again, he hung up the voice transmission. And Lin then contacted Vice Principal Yu Hua via voice transmission talisman. Celestial Immortal Yu Hua was given a fright by Lin's voice transmission. However, he was a man who had experienced many things, so he quickly calmed down and began to mull over what Lin had asked him. In the end, he expressed that he couldn't solve this problem, but he would try to contact the principal and ask him if there was any solution. And Lin expressed his gratitude again and didn't give up. Instead, he dialed Shi's voice transmission again. Holy F***, CK, Mr. Lin, you've been reborn? Shi exclaimed in shock. And Lin's lips twitched. That's right, I've been reborn. However, my Tao Foundation has been destroyed due to my bloodline transplant. Do you have a way to cure me? Do I look like an idiot to you? If your Tao Foundation really was destroyed, would you still be able to contact me via voice transmission? She chuckled coldly. Looks like you're not completely stupid. A friend of mine's Tao Foundation has been destroyed due to a bloodline transplant. Do you have a way to cure him? Tell me whatever you want, I'll do it even if it costs me my life, Lin continued. She was silent for a long while before replying. I think I know what you're thinking. My master has just returned to the Tai Chu continent, so I'll go ask him. If he has a way, I'll let you know immediately. Lin took a deep breath upon hearing this, and a never-before-seen expression appeared on his face. Who was Shi's master? He was Elder Lord Taishang. Elder Lord Taishang was also known as the Tao Patriarch on the Tai Chu continent. In terms of power and status, he was even more powerful than the celestial Dharch, and his understanding of cultivation was unparalleled. He was the most suitable person to ask for help when one's Tao Foundation had been destroyed. However, he often traveled the infinite worlds and enjoyed a lofty status, so Lin really didn't have the right to interact with him. He didn't think that she would be willing to trouble his master for this matter, and he was extremely touched by this. Lin expressed his gratitude profusely before ending the voice transmission. After receiving Ishi's promise, he was in a much better mood, and he couldn't help but start humming a tune. Knock, knock, knock. At this moment, a series of knocks suddenly sounded on the door. Come in, Lin said with a smile. He thought that it was Su Xiaolan, but to his surprise, a young woman in green clothes walked in with a basin of hot water in her hands. Master, I've prepared some water for you to wash your face with, the young woman said with a blush on her face. Lin thought for a moment before recalling that this young woman was referred to as Little Chun by Xiaolan. Thank you, Little Chun. Put the basin on the table. Lin was very pleased with Little Chun's title of master, and he spoke in a warm and gentle voice. All right. Little Chun nodded obediently and looked at Lin with a hint of reverence in her eyes before slowly departing. Due to her admiration for Lin's culinary skills, she had volunteered to serve Lin. She was initially a little nervous, but after seeing Lin's warm and gentle demeanor, the anxiety in her heart finally dissipated. At the same time, she was also looking forward to the day when she became friends with Lin and he would teach her a few culinary skills. That would truly be blissful. Lin straightened his clothes and washed up before making his way to Su Xiaolan's room. Chapter 454. Lin entered Su Xiaolan's room with the intention of luring her out of bed. He felt like this was going to be very interesting. However, Su Xiaolan had already woken up, and she was doing her makeup in front of a bronze mirror. A vibrant smile appeared on her face when she saw Lin. She took off her storage ring and handed it to Lin for safekeeping. Lin thought about it for a moment before deciding to keep the storage ring. He would always be by Su Xiaolan's side anyway, so he could buy whatever she needed. The two of them ate breakfast before setting off for the Lan Lin Medical Clinic. Today was the official opening day of the Lan Lin Medical Clinic, so there were already many onlookers waiting outside. Xixia City was only a small city, so the opening of a large medical clinic was a big event for them. After all, the people here didn't have any special entertainment activities, so they all wanted to join in on the fun. Crackle, 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 the sound of firecrackers erupted, and the lion dance team began their performance. Lin wore a set of white robes and white hair. His features were handsome, and there was a warm smile on his face. Su Xiaolan wore a set of green robes, and she was extremely beautiful and refined. There was also a warm smile on her face. The two of them stood side by side outside the medical clinic, as if they were a perfect couple. Everyone was extremely envious of them. In order to liven up the atmosphere, Lin snapped his fingers. A golden flaming phoenix soared into the sky before circling around the medical clinic while letting loose crisp cries of joy. Immediately afterward, a flaming dragon also appeared in the sky before circling around with a mighty aura. This was truly a flamboyant display, and all of the onlookers widened their eyes in amazement. Some of the more powerful cultivators were even more astonished by the sight of Lin's nonchalant display of this surgical technique. All of their distracting thoughts toward the Lan Lin Medical Clinic were completely erased from their minds, leaving behind only a deep sense of awe and veneration. Wow! The owner of the Lan Lin Medical Clinic really is an otherworldly being. His immortal spells are so powerful. I'm sure he's also very skilled in the art of healing. It looks like this clinic will be a very good choice. The lady boss of the medical clinic is also quite good. She's beautiful and has a very good disposition. I can tell that she's a professional at first glance. I want to see her. Bro, you're amazing. You judge whether someone is a professional based on their beauty? Besides, you'd better stop dreaming if you want the lady boss to treat you. The lady boss is only in charge of treating women, while the boss is in charge of treating men and cultivators. Aren't you afraid that the boss will punish you for saying this? When the new medical center opens, I heard that the price of medical treatment here is more affordable than other medical centers. The price of medicinal herbs here is generally 80% of the price of medicinal herbs in other medical centers. So cheap? I'm going to take a look. After the performance was over, the Lon Lin Medical Hall opened for business, and the onlookers swarmed in. Lin and Su Xiaolan sat at 2 counters and were responsible for treating different patients. In addition to the 2 of them, there were 3 men and 3 maids in the shop who were in charge of filling the medicine. Many people came to buy some nourishing herbs for the opening of the medical center. After all, how could there be so many people waiting for the opening of the medical center in a small city to come to see a doctor? Lin had taken pill refinement classes at the United Celestial Court University, so he had a solid foundation. He wouldn't treat people indiscriminately and mislead them. If he really couldn't find any problems, he would just toss a basic healing immortal spell at the patient and it was done. Things went quite smoothly for the 2 of them for the day. They treated a few dozen patients and earned a few hundred taels of silver and a few dozen spirit stones. They looked at the earnings of their labor on the table. The 2 of them were instantly disinterested. Su Xiaolan furrowed her beautiful brows and murmured, "We worked hard for a whole day, and this is all we got?" Lin replied in exasperation, "After deducting the cost, we didn't even earn half of this." Sigh. "I opened the medical center to protect myself, but now—" Su Xiaolan blushed slightly. "You don't have to do that anymore. What do you think? How about we open a steamed bun shop?" Lin hesitated momentarily before suggesting. Su Xiaolan naturally knew what steamed bun shop Lin was talking about. She pondered for a moment before replying, "I don't think that's a good idea. The main thing is that the living standards of Xixia City aren't high to begin with, so your steamed buns won't be able to sell for a high price. How about we eat them ourselves?" Lin immediately felt like this made a lot of sense. "Then, should we continue to open a medical center and experience life?" Let's continue to experience life." Su Xiaolan nodded with a smile. The first day of business for the Lon Lin Medical Center concluded. The 2 of them held hands and walked along the ancient city's small path under the resplendent glow of the setting sun. The next day, the Lon Lin Medical Center's patients all showed great results after a day of ferment. Their reputation and popularity skyrocketed, and the number of patients also increased significantly. There were even some cultivators among them. The cultivators were all treated by Lin, and he also refined pills on the spot. Su Xiaolan would occasionally instruct him on how to control the fire and how to make pills. The pill refinement ranks were divided into 5 major ranks: Flame Mastery Stage, Fulfillment Stage, Spirit Gathering Stage, Soul Creation Stage, and Supreme Stage. After receiving Xin Yin's pill refinement inheritance, Su Xiaolan had already reached the soul creation stage. Although she was unable to refine pills herself, she was still one of the most knowledgeable people in the Kingdom of the Nine State. Thus, it was no problem for her to instruct Lin. Lin didn't listen in class, and he had never refined pills before. He only knew how to knead mud balls. However, he was now a powerful cultivator of the soul formation intermediate stage. Even if he was an idiot, he could still forcibly push his pill refinement rank to the Flame Mastery stage. Thus, his current pill refinement rank was the Flame Mastery stage. Most of the patients in the city were cultivators of the 3rd or 4th stage Dao body. Very few cultivators of the higher stage would come to see him. After all, there were very few cultivators of the higher stage, and it wasn't easy for them to fall sick. It was exactly because of this that Lin's pill refinement rank of the Flame Mastery stage could still show off in the medical center. All of the female cultivators who came to see the doctor had their eyes lit up after witnessing Lin's smooth pill refinement technique. They all felt that this white-haired male was so mysterious and handsome. Under Su Xiaolan's guidance, Lin's pill refinement skills also improved at a rapid pace. The Lan Lin Medical Center's reputation quickly spread throughout Xixia City. In the afternoon, there were many more patients who came to see the doctor. Among them, there were some people of high status in the city. They all had some chronic illnesses to begin with. After hearing about the Lan Lin Medical Center's reputation, they all wanted to come and give it a try. And Lin's treatment of his illnesses was very successful. Of course, he also encountered some illnesses that he couldn't treat. For example, there was a female cultivator with a plain face who came to see Lin. However, Lin couldn't tell what illness she had. Lin couldn't help but ask, "Miss, do you know what illness you're suffering from?" The female cultivator blushed as she glanced at Lin. Then, she lowered her head shyly. "I'm lovesick." Lin. He massaged his brows. "Miss, our medical center doesn't treat mental illnesses. But if you're really suffering from lovesick, then go see him. Time, distance, worldly affairs, and all kinds of obstacles are nothing. As long as there's love, then nothing can stop you." The female cultivator looked up at Lin with glistening eyes. "Really? He's actually right in front of me right now. Ever since I saw him yesterday, I've been thinking about him." The more the female spoke, the more her blush became. Her gaze toward Lin became more and more gentle. Lin almost choked on his own saliva. The female looked at Lin. "You said before that time, distance, worldly affairs, and all kinds of obstacles are nothing. As long as there's love, then nothing can stop us." Lin's lips twitched upon hearing this. F***ck. "Didn't you see the lady boss next to you? Did you Lao send you here to give me a heart attack?" Su Xiaolan's ears were quite sensitive. She had already turned her gaze toward Lin. Lin said with a serious expression, "Miss, I was talking about the treatment for lovesick. You're suffering from unrequited love. I don't know how to treat this illness. Please leave." The female cultivator's expression darkened upon hearing this. However, she didn't pester him any further. She only nodded at Lin before leaving dejectedly. Su Xiaolan's expression also softened. She began to feel the pulse of the female cultivator in front of her. Lin heaved a sigh of relief. It looked like there were risks involved in treating illnesses. It was all because of his temperament. Chapter 455. On the second day of the clinic's opening, business was much better than the first day, and they made a lot more money. However, Lin and Su Xiaolan didn't seem to care much about this money. The sun gradually sank below the horizon, and after a busy day, the two of them returned to the courtyard. Not long after Lin and Su Xiaolan returned to the courtyard, the sound of wind whistling through the air erupted from above, followed by the screams of Xiao Chun and Xiao Xia. "Big brother, we're here, woof!" Dabai descended onto the courtyard atop a cloud and yelled with excitement. Lin held onto Su Xiaolan's hand as he appeared before the group of beast pets with a smile. "You're here." All of the beast pets were dumbstruck by his and Su Xiaolan's appearance. "Master, why has your hair turned white? You're so handsome. You look so much more graceful than before." Xiao Hong wagged her red head atop Dabai's head as she spoke in a sweet voice. "Is that the point? The point is that he's holding Su Xiaolan's hand right in front of us. There's actually a woman in this world who's willing to hold Big Brother An's hand, and it's Celestial Maiden Xiaolan at that. This is incredible, woof!" Dabai exclaimed with astonishment on his face. "Lin, that's not the point. The point is that I can't sense any vital energy fluctuations from Su Xiaolan," Xiao Chou said with a grave expression. The white scale wolf god didn't say anything as he stood obediently behind Dabai with a fawning expression. "Come in, I'll explain everything to you," Lin said with a smile. These beast pets were all his friends, and Su Xiaolan had told him that she didn't mind letting his beast pets know about this, so he summoned his beast pets to his side. The beast pets followed Lin into the main hall with a curious expression. In the courtyard, the four maids, Chun, Xiao, Qiu, and Dong, were looking at this scene with astonishment on their faces. "The big white dog has appeared. We were right. That young master is An Lin from the Celestial Court. Xiao Xia took a deep breath and said in surprise. I've read through the first few issues of the Kingdom of the Nine States magazine and discovered that our owner, Su Xiaolan, is also a freakishly talented prodigy of the vermilion bird sect. She's also a very powerful person. Little Dong exclaimed in admiration. So, we are serving a very powerful immortal. We must perform well. Xiao Qiu's eyes were filled with anticipation. She knew that when a man achieves the Tao, even his chickens and dogs rise to the heavens. Now that she had inexplicably latched onto his thigh, she naturally had to seize this opportunity. At the same time, in the main hall, after listening to An Lin's explanation, all the pet beasts burst into tears. Wah! Celestial Maiden Xiaolan is so good to Big Brother and how could an idiot like Big Brother and deserve something like this, woof? Dabai spoke as he wiped away his tears. Wah! Master, if you dare to betray Xiaolan, I'll destroy you in the name of the sun. Wah! Xiao Hong wiped away the tears flowing from her petals with her green, leafy hands as she spoke in a sweet, yet vicious voice. Big Brotherin, if you betray her, I'll castrate you with my staff. A ferocious expression also appeared on Xiao Chao's face as tears shimmered in his bulb-like eyes. It was said that monkey kings didn't shed tears easily, but he couldn't help it. Humph, master, if you betray her, I'll castrate you. Howl. The white-scale wolf god also stood up for a moment as frost began to materialize on his white claws. He used the Tai Chu language to warn An Lin. An Lin. So this was the conclusion that the pet beasts came to after his explanation? Why did they express such sentiments? He suspected that he was rearing a bunch of fake beast pets, and he felt like his little brother was a little cold. A vibrant smile also appeared on Su Xiaolan's face upon seeing the reactions of the beast pets. How about this? Xiaolan is currently lacking in power, so I'll be the one to protect her. Xiao Hong jumped into Su Xiaolan's arms as she spoke in her sweet voice. I'll look after the yard, the white-scale wolf god howled. Then I'll be responsible. Dabai scratched his head. I'll be responsible for Xiaolan's ride. Woof. Xiao Chou couldn't think of anything else to do, so he offered in the end, I'll be the third wheel. An Lin blacked out again. It was one thing for all of his beast pets to leave him and go to Xiaolan, but what was the point of being the third wheel so blatantly? F***ck, I really am rearing fake beast pets. Alright, you don't have to do this. Xiao Hong will be fine with me. What will An Lin do if you do this? You should at least understand his feelings, Su Xiaolan persuaded with a smile. I'll listen to Celestial Maiden Xiaolan, woof. Dabai agreed obediently. Alright, let us know if you need us to do anything. Xiao Chou nodded. I don't have anything to do anyway, so I'll just stay here and cultivate. The white-scale wolf god nodded. An Lin. Thus, all of the beast pets settled down in this courtyard. Days passed by in a mundane yet fulfilling manner. The four maids were initially quite fearful of these beast pets, but after spending some time with them, they discovered that they had an adorable side to them as well. For example, Xiao Hong could sing an unknown and moving song in the morning, Dabai could act cute, Xiao Chou could act ugly, and Little Wolf could howl at the moon for example. Xiao Hong could transform into a beautiful fairy, Dabai could transform into Mini Bai, Xiao Chou could transform into an adorable ugly monkey, and Little Wolf could transform from 4 legs to 2. The four maids felt as if a door had been opened before their eyes, revealing a glimpse of the rich and colorful cultivation world for the first time. Dabai would always accompany An Lin and Su Xiaolan to the Lan Lin Medical Clinic before resting inside. His adorable and mighty appearance quickly made him the mascot of the medical clinic and attracted many customers. An Lin's pill refinement skills also improved by leaps and bounds during these few days, and he soon reached the pinnacle of the flame mastery stage. At this moment, the system appeared again and issued a special mission. It stated that he had to kiss Dabai in front of Su Xiaolan, thereby allowing his pill refinement skills to progress from the flame mastery stage to the fulfillment stage. Unlin immediately chuckled upon hearing this. The system wanted to sow discord between him and Xiaolan? Dream on. Do you think I'm the kind of man who would abandon his wife for my cultivation base? He could break through to the flame mastery stage on his own. Furthermore, there was no penalty for failing this mission, so he could reject it. As such, there was even less reason for him to do it. They could always find a lot of fun in their mundane lives. For example, they would go hunting mutant beasts in the western desert. For example, Unlin would take Su Xiaolan on his brick to travel around on his own. For example, they would play mahjong together, and the one who lost the most couldn't eat the frying pan's dishes that night. For example, they would discuss what they should cook with the frying pan for dinner. In addition, the white-scale wolf god had already been conquered by the power of the frying pan. He was supposed to be a ferocious ancient wolf, but he was now even more obedient than Dabai. Unlin was still waiting for a certain piece of news amidst his peaceful life. However, he didn't think that Ishi would bring this news to Unlin only a few days later. Chapter 456. It was a breezy autumn night. After a busy day, everyone was resting in the main hall. This kind of cool weather was perfect for playing mahjong indoors. Xiao Hong had her own background music, and she was humming the melody of Fight the Landlord. Unlin, Su Xiaolan, Dabai, and Xiao Chou were engaged in a fierce battle, and the four maids were also spectating from the sidelines with great interest. Unlin was trying his best to maintain a sense of balance. He wanted Su Xiaolan to live a happy life as a mortal, but at the same time, he was also trying his best to find a solution to her Dao Foundation collapse. He didn't want her to return to a withered corpse after fighting so hard for a solution. Even more so, he didn't want Su Xiaolan to slowly die of old age as a mortal without being able to do anything about it. This was a very contradictory way of thinking, and it was very difficult to achieve perfection. However, Unlin was trying his best to achieve this goal. However, things took a turn for the better than he had anticipated. While they were playing mahjong, Unlin's voice transmission talisman suddenly lit up. He sensed for a moment and discovered that it was Ishi contacting him. He picked up the voice transmission talisman excitedly, and even his voice was trembling slightly. "Hello, Mr. Ishi, how's the situation?" "Haha, keep the voice transmission talisman open. My master will follow your aura and find you. He'll get to you after he understands the situation." There was a hint of relief and pride in Ishi's voice. Unlin was so excited that his body began to tremble slightly. "Thank you, Big Brother Ishi, thank you, Senior Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue, thank you so much." He knew what Ishi was implying. If there was no hope at all, then old Lord Taishang definitely wouldn't waste his time coming here. Since old Lord Taishang was coming, it meant that there was still hope. Unlin didn't conceal his voice transmission talisman, so all of his beast pets and Su Xiaolan heard it. The eyes of Dabai and the other pet beasts lit up in anticipation. Su Xiaolan clenched her white hands tightly. Her eyes were a little red as she suppressed the throbbing in her heart. Only when one truly lost something could one truly understand how important that thing was to oneself. Su Xiaolan did not regret using her cultivation path to save Unlin, but it did not mean that she did not cherish it and did not care about it. On the contrary, she was a very proud woman, like a phoenix soaring in the sky. She longed for the blue sky more than anyone else, and she wanted to see what was at the end of cultivation. Unlin reached out and held Su Xiaolan's delicate fist. He smiled faintly and signaled her not to be too excited. However, Unlin himself was extremely excited, and his mind was in a complete mess. He was thinking about what he should say when he saw old Lord Taishang, if there were any unspoken rules, if he needed to do anything, or give something. "Hey, you guys are playing mahjong? I'm good at it too." A rather old but extremely comforting voice rang out. Unknowingly, a white-haired old man had already appeared beside the mahjong table. He smiled as he looked at the mahjong tiles on the table. That little girl Nuwa once boasted to me that mahjong is a novel game that was first created in her small world. It's very fun, and she coaxed us, the three pure ones, to play against her. In the end, I beat her to a pulp. She never dared to mention mahjong to me again. At the side, the old man proudly talked about his battle achievements, like a child who had won a game and was jubilant. However, when everyone heard it, they felt their hearts palpitate. And Lin bowed without hesitation. Junior and Lin pays his respects to the Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue. Su Xiaolan also bowed excitedly. Junior Su Xiaolan pays her respects to the Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue. The other pet beasts also bowed respectfully. As for the four maids, they were completely dumbfounded. Heavenly Lord Tao and Virtue? Old Lord Taishang? Was he the legendary founder of Taoism in the Kingdom of the Nine States magazine? Heavens! He was an immortal among immortals. To them, the Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue was the heavens. And now, such a transcendent being had appeared before them? The maids were completely dumbfounded. They felt like they were living in a dream. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue looked deeply at Lin and Su Xiaolan before a smile appeared on his face. There's no need for formalities. Ishi has already told me about your situation. As for the rest, I've already roughly guessed it. You are all sentimental people. I had nothing better to do, so I came over to see if I could help you. He flicked a finger as he spoke, and a white light shot into Su Xiaolan's glabella. Lin swallowed as he looked at the Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue with anticipation in his eyes. His heart was beating very quickly. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue was an old man with a ruddy complexion and a healthy complexion. Furthermore, he had a temperament that transcended the world and blended in with nature. At first glance, he gave off an ethereal yet tranquil feeling. The bloodline transplant method has been perfected to perfection. Although the collapse of the Tao Foundation is unavoidable, it won't harm the meridians, sea of vital energy, consciousness, or any other functions. There's a chance, the Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue said lightly. Whoosh! Lin's mind buzzed as the words, "there's a chance," reverberated incessantly in his mind like the most pleasing sound of nature. Su Xiaolan's body trembled slightly as she stared blankly at the elderly man before her. Oh? You have another bloodline hidden within your body? The true dragon bloodline? And it's very pure as well. Very good. Then the chances of success will increase by 100-fold. You can use another bloodline as a guide, preferably a phoenix bloodline of extremely high purity. By fusing the two bloodlines together, you will be able to extract the Tao intent of the dormant true dragon bloodline and reverse repair the Tao Foundation, the Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue explained. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue's words lit up Lin and Su Xiaolan's hearts with hope. Senior, how should I fuse two bloodlines together? Lin couldn't help but ask. Well, the method with the highest chance of success is naturally to use the bloodline transplant method and return the bloodline that Su Xiaolan originally gave you to her. That way, I can guarantee an 80% success rate, the Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue replied with a smile. Su Xiaolan and all the beast pets faltered upon hearing this. Lin looked at the Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue with a calm expression. No problem, I'm willing. I'm not willing. If I do that, your Tao Foundation will collapse, and you will become immortal. I don't want to see that happen to you. Su Xiaolan looked at Lin with a resolute expression. You gave me my life in the first place. Now that the frost poison has been eradicated, and you've allowed me to live for another lifetime, why should I take your power? Lin didn't agree with Su Xiaolan for the first time. I said I'm not willing, so I'm not willing. Su Xiaolan pursed her lips with an extremely resolute expression. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue hurriedly tried to mediate just as the two of them were about to start arguing. Don't get worked up. I've only mentioned the method with the highest chance of success. There are other methods as well. However, Unlin shook his head with a resolute expression. There's no need to say anything else. Since this is the method with the highest chance of success, we have to choose it. I don't want to regret it, and I don't want Xiaolan to take any more risks. Su Xiaolan spoke in a panicked voice. Senior, please don't pay attention to his nonsense, please tell us about other methods. There's no need to say anything, Senior. Come on. Senior, ignore him and tell us. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue. Chapter 457. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue looked on helplessly at the two of them who were about to start bickering again, and he immediately muted them. Unlin and Su Xiaolan realized that their conversation had gone silent, and they lowered their heads in shame. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue smiled with satisfaction. I'll tell you the rest of the methods. The second method is to find other cultivators with the Phoenix bloodline and have them willingly transfer their bloodline to Su Xiaolan. The stronger and purer the transplanted bloodline, the higher the success rate. Of course, no matter how powerful the transplanted bloodline is, it won't be able to achieve the effect of transplanting the Phoenix bloodline into Unlin's body. The third method is to find the Phoenix mythological beast and obtain its true blood essence. That way, the power of the bloodline can also be reforged. The success rate of this method is about 50%. However, the number of divine beasts phoenixes is extremely rare in the myriad of worlds, so it will probably take a lot of effort to find them. Moreover, the origin true blood is not ordinary blood, it contains a part of its origin power, so it is extremely difficult to obtain such blood. Alright, those are the three methods. Tell me what you think. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue's muting technique was lifted as soon as he finished speaking. Su Xiaolan didn't even think about it. Use the third method. It's fine, I can wait. Unlin didn't object. Instead, he focused his gaze on Su Xiaolan's chest. Su Xiaolan detected Unlin's invasive gaze, and her face blushed. What are you looking at? Unlin didn't say anything. Instead, he reached toward Su Xiaolan's snow-white neck and grabbed onto the necklace that was glowing with a white luster. A drop of blood that looked like a teardrop appeared before everyone's eyes. Under the contrast of Su Xiaolan's fair skin, it was extremely bright and dazzling. It was as if all the blood and tears of heaven and earth were gathered in this drop of blood. Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue, can this blood be used? Unlin asked curiously. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue's breathing faltered upon seeing this drop of blood. The higher the level of an object, the harder it was to detect it. This was because they could transform into nature and become one with heaven and earth. However, when this drop of blood appeared before the Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue, he couldn't take his eyes off it. This is the true blood of a holy beast. From its aura, it should be the true blood essence of the vermilion bird. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue's calm and collected expression had already disappeared, replaced by one of extreme shock. Unlin immediately knew that his guess was correct. The Black Phoenix had snuck into the Vermilion Bird trial grounds to steal the Holy Beast Vermilion Bird's power, and that power included this drop of Holy Beast true blood. Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue, can this drop of true blood replace the Phoenix's origin true blood? Unlin was a little uncertain. Why not? Why not? The Vermilion Bird was born in the primordial chaos, and it is the ancestor of the winged tribe. It is one of the 4 holy beasts, and according to its bloodline, it is the ancestor of the phoenix. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue exclaimed. The ancestor of the phoenix? Unlin was a little absent-minded. As far as he knew, the phoenix and the vermilion bird were 2 different creatures. He didn't expect that they would actually have a bloodline connection. Doesn't that mean it's a success? Su Xiaolan was also a little dazed, and her eyes glazed over as if she had been struck by a huge wave of happiness. She didn't think that the necklace Unlin had given her would have such a powerful background. That was the true blood essence of a holy beast. That was a treasure that even the heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue was extremely moved by. Su Xiaolan had already prepared herself for Enlin to slowly die of old age if he couldn't find the true blood essence of the phoenix within 100 years. Who would have thought that the gift from that day would become her hope to soar into the sky again? After going around in circles, the biggest treasure was right before her eyes. Perhaps this was the beauty of fate. The heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue chuckled. I didn't think that you would possess the true blood essence of the vermilion bird. That makes things much easier. This type of bloodline power is similar to that of the phoenix, but it's a grade higher than that of the phoenix. It will be able to activate the true intent of the true dragon bloodline within Su Xiaolan's body. Not only will it be able to perfectly reconstruct her Tao foundation, but it will also be able to elevate the power of her bloodline to a whole new level. Enlin took a deep breath. Then, what about the success rate? Is there a need to ask about the success rate? With the true blood essence of the vermilion bird, there's no chance of failure for me to personally conduct this Tao Foundation reconstruction ceremony. The heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue smiled faintly, and his expression was filled with confidence. Even the beast pets couldn't help but cheer upon hearing this. Su Xiaolan gripped the necklace tightly in her hands as she did her best to suppress her emotions. At this moment, the heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue had already brought out his purple golden bell. The sound of the bell, which was imbued with the sound of the great Tao, began to ring, and heaven and earth began to transform. Before they knew it, everyone had already arrived in the sky above Xixia City. The beast pets were still relatively calm, but the four maids were so frightened that they huddled together again. They stared at the tiny houses in front of them, and their legs felt like jelly. In particular, little Chiu, who had acrophobia, hugged little Dong tightly as she trembled uncontrollably. The heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue gazed at Su Xiaolan as he made a series of hand seals. An extremely mystical ripple proliferated in all directions. Don't refuse. Let nature take its course. His words were imbued with the laws of heaven and earth. The true blood of the vermilion bird was activated by a certain power, and it released a crimson glow. It slowly left the necklace and flew into the space between Su Xiaolan's brows. Faint golden-veined patterns appeared on the vast expanse of land. This was a spell formation. A vast sea of starlight flashed, and the power of the starlight pierced through the void before converging toward the green-robed woman. The earth was the spell formation, and the starry sky was the gravitational force. Su Xiaolan was situated in the center of the spell formation, and she was constantly being battered by the mighty power of heaven and earth. The roar of the true dragon reverberated throughout heaven and earth. The true intent of the Tao began to appear, and the heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue pulled out a diamond bracelet. This bracelet had two sides, with one side conforming to the great Tao of heaven and earth, while the other side conformed to the principles of all things. Immortal and mortal reversal, Tao recast. Boom! The rumbling of the great Tao struck directly into one's soul. An expression of extreme agony appeared on Su Xiaolan's face, and the image of a phoenix appeared between her brows. Then, it transformed into a white bird totem. Enlin's body shuddered, and a bloody gash suddenly appeared on his wrist. His golden blood, which was imbued with the extremely pure power of the true flame, began to fly toward Su Xiaolan. Su Xiaolan's expression turned pale with fright upon seeing this, and she was about to forcibly stop the recast of her Tao foundation. The heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue roared, "Don't stop! This isn't a bloodline transplant, it's a bloodline attachment. This is the phoenix bloodline within Enlin's body. It's automatically attaching itself to the bloodline of the vermilion bird, and it won't affect his Tao foundation." Su Xiaolan chose to remain silent upon hearing this. She silently allowed the golden blood to flow into her body and recast her Tao foundation. The golden blood completely left his body, and Enlin knew that he no longer had the power of the phoenix bloodline. However, there was nothing to be regretful about. After all, that bloodline belonged to Su Xiaolan in the first place. Right at this moment, Su Xiaolan let out another delicate moan. A small drop of white blood flew out from between her brows and flew toward Enlin's wrist. The terrifying and pure power of flames threatened to crush heaven and earth. This was the paramount holy power. Enlin was given a fright, and he instinctively chose to refuse. This was Su Xiaolan's power. The heavenly lord of Tao and virtue roared again, "Don't refuse. This is the power of the vermilion bird bloodline. It won't harm Su Xiaolan's power. This is a good thing." Hearing this, Enlin stopped resisting and silently accepted the drop of white blood. The heavenly lord of Tao and virtue wiped the sweat from his forehead. The recasting of the Tao Foundation this time required bloodline attachment and bloodline feedback. It was truly a series of twists and turns. How could so many accidents happen to these two? Thankfully, he was experienced and knowledgeable, and he was able to deduce that these were the two possibilities. Otherwise, he really would be screwed. Enlin felt a warm current flowing through his entire body. Immediately afterward, the white blood droplet flowed into his sea of vital energy and landed on the white phoenix's body. A holy aura surged from the white phoenix's body, and its white wings gradually grew in size. A pair of lifelike eyes began to appear on its body, and it looked down upon all things in this world as if it were a real life form. And Kiran was given a fright by this development, and he silently retreated, not daring to provoke the flaming bird anymore. Why is the aura of the phoenix so similar to the aura of the vermilion bird's true blood essence? Is it a phoenix or a vermilion bird? Enlin was a little confused. Right at this moment, a soft cry reverberated through the heavens. White flaming wings spread out behind Su Xiaolan's back. White flames imbued with a holy aura spread through the surroundings, transforming the entire space into a sea of flames. The projection of an azure dragon appeared and revolved around Su Xiaolan's petite body. The white flames were like fairies in the night sky, and they danced around her body with boundless vitality. Soul formation stage. Has she truly progressed to soul formation stage? Enlin stared blankly at Su Xiaolan in the center of the flames, and he was both elated and astonished. But why wasn't there any tribulation lightning? Enlin was a little confused again. The sea of white flames obscured the night sky, making it appear as if it were daytime. The woman in a jade dress stood within the sea of flames, and her aura became more and more boundless. In that instant, her eyes turned a pure golden color, and a peerless divine might descended, making her appear as if she were a queen looking down upon all living beings. In that instant, her white flaming wings spread out in a pure and flawless manner, making her appear as if she were a proud holy maiden standing above the heavens. Enlin stared blankly at the woman who had once again soared into the sky, and his lips moved as he murmured, "Welcome back, Xiaolan." His voice was very soft, but the holy and regal woman was already staring at Enlin with glowing eyes. In the next instant, she had already appeared before Enlin, and she pressed her soft body tightly against Enlin's as they embraced each other. Tears flowed from the corners of her eyes as she spoke in a trembling voice, I'm back." Chapter 458. After an emotional embrace, the two of them bowed toward the heavenly lord of Tao and virtue again. "I will definitely do my best to repay your kindness, senior," Su Xiaolan replied with a determined expression. "All right, how can I ask you juniors to repay me for something so trivial? I didn't do much anyway. The perfect bloodline transplant technique, the hidden true dragon bloodline, and the vermilion bird true blood are the key to reconstructing your Tao Foundation." The heavenly lord of Tao and virtue stroked his white beard with a smile. The purple golden bell's voice sounded again, and the space around them began to warp. Everyone returned to the Lan Lin courtyard, but the heavenly lord of Tao and virtue was nowhere to be seen. "Enlin, I really do have something I need your help with next time we meet. I hope you won't turn me down." The heavenly lord of Tao and virtue's voice reverberated through the air. Lin bowed again. I will do my best to help you when the time comes. Su Xiaolan, the beast pets, and the four maids all bowed respectfully toward the sky to express their gratitude. The white-scaled wolf god didn't think that even a legendary figure like the heavenly lord of Tao and virtue would need Lin's help with something, and he was instantly struck by a sense of incredulity. Before he knew it, he had become even more respectful toward his master, and he became even more obedient. Xiaolan, you're already at the soul formation initial stage? Lin asked. Su Xiaolan nodded with a smile. That's right. After absorbing the vermilion bird true blood essence, my domain has been perfected. During the reconstruction of my Tao foundation, I borrowed the power of the holy beast's bloodline to allow my spirit root to disperse, my consciousness to solidify, and my meridians to reach the soul formation initial stage. I didn't even have to face a minor lightning tribulation. Lin didn't understand what Su Xiaolan was saying, but he felt like it was quite impressive. A thought suddenly occurred to him, and he began to hold on to Su Xiaolan's slender hand. What do you want to do? A light blush appeared on Su Xiaolan's face as she stared at Lin. A gentle smile appeared on Lin's face as he pulled out a storage ring from his storage ring and slowly slipped it onto his finger. Now, this storage ring shall be returned to its rightful owner. Su Xiaolan smiled sweetly, her eyes curved into cute crescent moons. Nothing else. Lin blinked. What else? Su Xiaolan curled her lip. Nothing, let's continue playing mahjong. Just like that, the clown, Dabai, Su Xiaolan, and Lin continued to play mahjong, as if the previous incident had passed. Dabai was enraged, and he transmitted his voice to Lin. Big brother, are you an idiot? Why didn't you express your gratitude earlier? Lin was puzzled. What do you mean? Dabai slapped his forehead. It's such a joyous occasion, how can you not take the initiative? Give celestial maiden Xiaolan a present, give her a kiss, or take her to the heavens. Aren't you recovering your cultivation base? What can't you do then? What's the point of continuing to play mahjong with her? Lin thought about it for a moment before coming to a sudden realization. He extended an invitation with a nervous expression. Xiaolan, the moon is so beautiful tonight. How about we go for a walk outside? Su Xiaolan shook her head with a disinterested expression. Forget it, we're already playing mahjong. Besides, it's getting late. Maybe next time. Bam! She ate the 3 tiles that the clown had tossed to her with 2 tiles of 3s before placing them on the side of the table. Lin felt like he had missed out on some precious opportunity, and a forlorn expression appeared on his face. At this moment, the 4 maids were also discussing excitedly among themselves. Little Chiu was the youngest among them. Big sister, that breeze-like thing is vital energy? It feels so special. Little Chun clenched her fists with excitement. It must be vital energy. We're cultivators now. Little Dong nodded. So that's what it means to be able to ascend to the heavens. The energy fluctuations caused by Master's recovery have allowed us to all become cultivators? Little Xia had an excited expression on her face. We must follow Master. It's time for us to reach the pinnacle of our lives. Little Chiu gripped the hem of her clothes with a nervous expression. But will Master really take us with her? All of the maids fell silent upon hearing Little Chiu's words. They could more or less guess what was going on from the conversation between Lin and the heavenly lord of Tao and virtue. Master had come to Xixia City because she had lost her power. Now that she had recovered her power, it was very likely that she would leave. They were only maids who had only interacted with Su Xiaolan for a short period of time. It could even be said that they had only met by chance, so it was very normal for her to leave. Right at this moment, Su Xiaolan, who had been playing mahjong this entire time, turned to the maids who were whispering among themselves with a smile. What are you all thinking? How could I abandon such an adorable girl? Tell your families tomorrow if they want to become in-name disciples of the Vermilion Bird sect with me, or if they want to stay in the Lan Lin courtyard. The mouths of the 4 seasons all gaped open in shock. They didn't think that Su Xiaolan would hear their whispers, nor did they think that Su Xiaolan would allow them to make their own decisions. All of the maids' eyes reddened, and they expressed their determination to follow Su Xiaolan no matter what. Setting aside the fact that their master was an extremely powerful figure, just her personality alone was enough to make them very fond of her. Even though she didn't feed them frying pan food and often abused them, aside from these flaws, she was still a perfect goddess. They played mahjong until midnight, and Enlin and Su Xiaolan bade goodnight before returning to their respective rooms to rest. Even though Enlin was a little regretful tonight, he was still very blissful overall. After all, he had resolved an important matter in his life, and all of the knots in his heart had been untied. Hence, he slept with a smile on his face. Su Xiaolan returned to her room, and a sweet smile appeared on her face as she looked at her own beautiful features in the bronze mirror. A thought then seemed to have occurred to her, and she grumbled under her breath, "Idiot," before going to bed. Things were always so unpredictable. In just one night, she had reconstructed her Tao foundation and regained her power. Not only that, but her cultivation base had also progressed to the soul formation initial stage. Now that she thought about it, even though there were many coincidental factors, none of this would have happened if it weren't for a certain someone who chased after her with no regard for his own life. It was a certain idiot's determination that saved her. Su Xiaolan covered half of her head with a blanket, revealing her exquisite nose and bright eyes. A hint of remorse suddenly appeared in her eyes. Would it have been better if I had accepted beautiful Moonlight's invitation to go out with him? No, I can't progress too quickly. There's still a probation period, and I'm not that easy to woo, but won't he be unhappy? Who cares about him? There's still a long way to go. I don't want to think about it anymore. I'm still young. That's right, I'm still young. The night was as tranquil as water. Enlin was fast asleep with a blissful expression on his face, but a certain woman was still daydreaming. Chapter 459. The next morning, many residents of Xixia City had already gathered outside the Lan Lin Medical Clinic. After a few days of operation, the Lan Lin Medical Clinic had become renowned throughout this small city. Their prices were fair, their medical skills were profound, and their reputation was excellent. All of the residents who fell ill liked to go to this clinic for treatment. However, what they didn't expect was that this clinic that had only been open for a few days would close down for good. There was a piece of red paper pasted on the door of the clinic with a dozen or so large words written on it. Due to the boss and lady boss's obsession with cultivation, the clinic is closed indefinitely. Everyone, let us meet again if fate wills it. All of the residents were completely dumbstruck upon seeing the large words on the door. Tears streamed down the faces of all the other medical centers in Xixia City upon hearing this news. They praised Enlin and Su Xiaolan for their benevolence in sparing their lives. Within the Lan Lin courtyard, Enlin leaped onto his brick and flew toward the Vermilion Bird sect with Su Xiaolan, his beast pets, and his 4 maids in tow. Within a mountain range that was devoid of sunlight, on a black mountain peak over 100,000 feet tall, a white-haired elderly man opened his murky eyes. Only after enduring 3 tribulations for 100 years can one's heart appreciate one another. Life and death tribulations, separation tribulations, immortal tribulations. I didn't think that they would experience all of these tribulations in such a short time. The elderly man pulled out a fortune chart and smiled as he recalled his fortune-telling session. So be it, let's not disturb them. I hope young master can have a happy ending. The Vermilion Bird sect had just experienced an earth-shattering battle. Over 1,000 disciples and 2 elders had perished, and they had even lost their sect treasure, the holy vermilion flame. It could be said that the sect had been severely wounded. Some disciples were grieving over the loss of their family and friends. There were also many disciples who were extremely indignant at their own incompetence and were working hard in their cultivation. Even though there were many ambitious people in the Vermilion Bird sect at this time, there was an indescribable lack of vitality. Mo-Hai was also working hard in his cultivation. Countless scorching flames burned his body, making him fluctuate between exhilaration and pain. He was working extremely hard in his cultivation. All he wanted was to break through to the Return to Void stage as soon as possible so that he could gain the power to charge into the Holy City and avenge his brothers who had died at the hands of the Snow Maidens. However, at this moment, Mo-Hai's voice transmission talisman suddenly lit up. Ji Yongfang came to the top of the hill, where there was a tombstone for Su Xiaolan. Alas, junior sister, why do you insist on going with that person? If you had chosen a steady man like me, then this tragedy wouldn't have happened. Why don't you understand? The more talented a person is, the easier it is for them to fall. Only a steady and outstanding man like me can survive until the end in this cruel cultivation world. Ji Yongfang placed the white chrysanthemum in front of the tombstone and sighed softly. Let his feelings fade away with this sigh. Then, his voice transmission amulet suddenly lit up. Hey, junior brother Zhao, what's wrong? Brother Ji, Enlin and Su Xiaolan are going back to the Vermilion Bird sect. Impossible. Didn't they already die in the holy glacial lands? Don't spout nonsense if you don't have any proof. I'm not lying to you. Enlin contacted Mo-Hai personally, and I heard that he's going to bring back the holy vermilion flame along with the flame sealing disc. The entire sect is in an uproar right now. He's the hero of our sect. Ji Yongfang's body swayed slightly upon hearing this, and he silently ended the voice transmission. The sunlight was a little blinding, and he stared at the tombstone for Su Xiaolan. This doesn't make sense. How did they manage to bring back the holy vermilion flame? They're only at the soul formation stage. How can they be so freakishly talented? This doesn't make sense. Boom! He crushed Su Xiaolan's tombstone into dust with a single palm before leaving with a dejected expression. At the main gate of the Vermilion Bird sect, tens of thousands of Vermilion Bird sect disciples looked up into the sky with scorching light in their eyes. All of the disciples wore red robes, and from afar, they appeared as if the entire sect was burning with passion and boundless vitality. At the forefront of the group were a few dozen elders, as well as Grand Elder Situ Feng. Situ Feng could have used spatial manipulation to teleport Enlin and Su Xiaolan to the Vermilion Bird sect from over 500 kilometers away. However, he didn't ask for Enlin's location, nor did he do so. All of them waited silently at the main gate, waiting for the holy vermilion flame to come home, waiting for the hero of the Vermilion Bird sect to come home. In the distance, a black brick suddenly appeared. Right at this moment, raucous cheers erupted from the divine tree of the Vermilion Bird sect. Enlin hadn't even seen anyone yet, but he was already stunned by the earth-shattering cheers. When he flew closer, he saw tens of thousands of people in red robes standing at the main gate, and he almost fell off the flying brick in shock. What's going on? Didn't I only tell Mo-Hai that I was going to return to the Vermilion Bird sect and tell him to prepare to welcome me? What the hell was with the whole sect coming out? Raucous cheers erupted into the heavens. Many of the sect disciples even sobbed with tears in their eyes at the sight of the flame-sealing disc in Enlin's hand. The feeling of regaining something that had been lost and regaining the dignity of the sect was something that anyone who wasn't a member of the Vermilion Bird sect would never be able to empathize with. "Welcome home," someone casually shouted. Then tens of thousands of people yelled "Welcome home" in unison. Their sincere and passionate voices reverberated between heaven and earth, and both Enlin and Su Xiaolan were moved. Enlin didn't have much of a concept of a sect in the past, but after experiencing the emotions of tens of thousands of people, he began to understand the significance of a sect. A sect was not only a stepping stone for cultivation, nor was it a place for growth. It was also a haven for cultivation, and it was the home of a cultivator who was struggling to find their Tao. Enlin suddenly fell in love with this sect as he looked at the teary-eyed and excited faces around him. He fell in love with this sect that was made up of countless sentimental people. He descended before Grand Elder Sidu Feng and handed the flame-sealing disc to him with a smile. "I'm glad I didn't disappoint you." Sidu Feng looked at Enlin and Su Xiaolan with a wide smile on his face. "You're both the pride of the Vermilion Bird sect. Welcome home. We'll talk about the rewards later. Go and rest now." The tens of thousands of people parted to create a path for Enlin and Su Xiaolan. Enlin and Su Xiaolan walked side by side on this path, accepting the scorching and reverent gazes from the onlookers. Enlin suddenly held on to Su Xiaolan's delicate hand and puffed out his chest. Su Xiaolan shot a reproachful glance at Enlin, and a blush appeared on her face. She didn't think that Enlin would be so daring, but she still did as he said. Over 10,000 sect disciples let loose cries of surprise, immediately followed by friendly and gossipy smiles on their faces. Ji Yongfang's heart shattered upon seeing this. At this moment, someone began to clap. Countless people instantly followed suit, and the applause was earth-shattering. Even Ji Yongfang was infected by the atmosphere, and he couldn't help but clap as well. He gave Enlin a thumbs up. Lan Yen screamed excitedly at Su Xiaolan. Yang Yuan secretly transmitted his voice to Enlin, discussing whether he should hold the wedding with Enlin in 3 years. This was a joyous moment for the Vermilion Bird sect, but it was also a wonderful moment for Enlin and Su Xiaolan. On this day, the holy Vermilion Flame returned to the Vermilion Bird sect. On this day, the Vermilion Bird sect was as red as fire. Enlin and Su Xiaolan had returned to the Vermilion Bird sect, and that heart-stirring welcome ceremony had become an unforgettable memory. Chapter 460. Enlin and Su Xiaolan arrived at a courtyard. There were many wisteria trees planted here, and from afar, they looked like patches of purple clouds. It was a beautiful sight. This was the courtyard that Su Xiaolan lived in. It was a very large courtyard in the Vermilion Bird sect. Seeing the exquisite decorations, the beautiful flowers and trees, and the small butterfly lake that was as clear as a mirror, the 4 handmaidens quickly fell in love with this courtyard. They happily gathered together and chattered non-stop. Enlin reclined leisurely on his recliner and basked in the warm sunlight. At this moment, he saw Dabai bring out a golden ball that resembled a rice ball and stuff it into his mouth. "Dabai, what are you eating?" Enlin asked. "This is dog food." "Woof." Dabai replied as he ate. "Enlin," Dabai continued to explain upon seeing Enlin's expression, "didn't I obtain the dog food inheritance from the Purple Star ruins? I then tried to make dog food according to the inheritance method. Who would have thought that this dog food would be so delicious? Also, whenever I feel lonely when I see other people flaunting their love, I'll eat a mouthful of dog food to instantly lift my mood." "Dabai, did I make you feel wronged?" Enlin asked with a sympathetic expression. Dabai looked at Enlin with tears in his eyes. "Big brotherin, you finally understand how I feel. You flaunt your love every day. I thought I'd fallen out of favor, war woof. I understand how you feel, but you'll have to get used to flaunting your love." Enlin stroked Dabai's head with a sympathetic expression. Dabai faltered slightly upon hearing this before stuffing a few more mouthfuls of dog food into his mouth. Enlin looked at the golden rice balls of dog food with a curious expression. "Is dog food really that delicious? Give me one. I'm only left with dog food. Are you going to snatch that from me? A man with a girlfriend doesn't deserve dog food, woof," Dabai said with a face full of grief and indignation. Enlin smiled and said, "Don't you have Qing Hua too? Why are you eating dog food?" "Qing Hua isn't my girlfriend. If I asked you to choose a female dog as your girlfriend, would you agree?" Dabai rolled his eyes and said in disdain. "That's true." Enlin nodded upon hearing this. He felt like this made a lot of sense. Then, His expression froze and he came back to his senses. Right my ass. I'm not a dog. At this moment, the white-scaled wolf god also made his way over. However, he appeared to be a little nervous and reserved. Its skin was originally covered with white scales, but now that it was not in combat, its skin began to grow fluffy white fur, and its body swelled up, making it look like a fatty that weighed a few 100 kilograms. The white-scale wolf god half knelt to the ground with a respectful expression. Master, do you need me to do anything? Whether it's to guard the stronghold or to expand the territory for you, I'll go through fire and water. Unlin faltered slightly upon hearing this. Guard the stronghold? Do I have any power? What the F***ck is this about expanding the territory? I don't even have a single soldier. How the F***ck am I supposed to expand? Ahem. Little wolf, we're currently biding our time, so don't be in a hurry to conquer the world. At your current stage, the most important thing is to improve your cultivation base. Unlin spoke with a calm expression. The white-scale wolf god replied with a scorching light in his eyes. We barbarians can only improve our cultivation bases by drinking the blood of our enemies in battle. Unlin, what a decent wolf. This was completely at odds with the style of his beast pet team. To be honest, he was a little tempted to let this wolf go. Big brotherin, I've actually been wondering what rank this little wolf is. Little 4? Little 5? Little 6? Woof? Dabai licked the dog food in his hand with a confused expression. The white-scale wolf god was confused. Aren't you 3 the only beast pets? No, little 4 was accidentally eaten by us, and little 5 was killed by Big Brother Anne's explosion. Woof. Dabai spoke with a pained expression. The white-scale wolf god's legs almost gave out from under him as he stared at Unlin with shock and horror on his face. Was it eaten? Killed by an explosion? What had his predecessors gone through? Only now did the white-scale wolf god realize just how terrifying his master was. With this in mind, he immediately repressed his emotions and looked at Unlin with an obedient expression. His eyes were wide open as he stuck out his tongue, trying to gain favor. Master, you can call me Little 4, Little Wolf doesn't mind. Unlin heaved a faint sigh. Leave Little 4 for Little Blue. I won't forget about it. As for that dragon, it was just an accident. A beast pet contract is different from a slave contract, so Little Wolf will be the #1 servant. Master is so awesome. Your analysis is so logical, Little Wolf is in awe. Little Wolf will definitely be loyal to you in the future, and I won't let you down. The white-scale wolf god was extremely excited. Unlin, all right, you can go now. Unlin waved a hand. Yes, master. If there's anything you need me to do, make sure to tell me. Little Wolf loves to share master's burdens. The white-scale wolf god bowed respectfully before slowly departing. After the white-scale wolf god left, Dabai spoke again. I feel like Little Wolf has been traumatized by something. Woof. Unlin rolled his eyes. It's all because of what you said that scared Little Wolf. But I'm telling the truth, Woof. Dabai replied with a nonchalant expression. That's why I didn't retort. Sigh, beast pets and whatnot are all fake. Unlin heaved a forlorn sigh. Dabai. Big brotherin, I feel like you've been traumatized as well, woof. Unlin couldn't be bothered to reply to Unlin, and he lay down lazily on his recliner like an old man, enjoying his leisure time. The sun gradually sank below the horizon, and stars began to appear in the night sky. The canopy of the vermilion bird sect suddenly began to tremor violently. A white flame in the shape of a vermilion bird flew into the sky and let loose a joyful cry, as if it was expressing its joy at being able to return to its home. At that moment, all of the disciples of the vermilion bird sect felt as if they were being protected by some type of flame power. This power was as gentle as water, yet as warm as the spring sun, and it circulated within their bodies, bestowing upon them a sense of warmth and safety. The entire sect erupted into a frenzy as countless disciples looked up at the holy vermilion flame in the sky with tears in their eyes. There were also many disciples who were cheering and hugging one another. Some disciples began to unleash flame spell techniques into the sky. Flaming meteors, flaming dragons, flaming phoenixes, flaming rings. A series of colorful, dazzling flame spell techniques flew into the sky before exploding, lighting up the entire night sky in an extremely spectacular display. And Lin couldn't help but stand up as he stared at the spectacular sight before him. What beautiful fireworks! A green-robed figure made her way to Lin's side with a smile on her face. The light from the flames in the night sky shone down on her face, creating an indescribably beautiful sight. That's right. The fireworks tonight are so beautiful. Lin inched his face closer to the woman's soft, pink lips. A sweet and blissful feeling spread through his body. Dabai looked at the two of them kissing, and he silently picked up his golden rice ball before stuffing a few more mouthfuls into his mouth. Chapter 461. It was another beautiful night. Lin and Su Xiaolan watched fireworks for an entire night before returning to their respective rooms to rest. The next morning, Lin had only just woken up when a handsome young man with crimson eyes came to find him. "Hi, Lin, how did it go last night? Did you have fun?" Mo Hai asked with a shifty look on his face. "Yeah, the fireworks were so beautiful," Lin replied with a blissful smile. Mo Hai leaned over to Lin and whispered into his ear, "Did it work?" Lin was confused. "What do you mean?" "Ahem. Do I have to spell it out?" Mo Hai looked at Lin with a hint of a smile on his face. "Last night there was a lot of cannon fire. You and Su Xiaolan didn't set off any fireworks? A lot of cannon fire? Set off fireworks? F***ck. Lin's lips twitched. He seemed to understand what Mo Hai was trying to say, and he glared at Mo Hai. F***ck off. Xiaolan and I are just classmates. What are you thinking? At this moment, Dabai also chimed in. That's right, big brother, and is so pure. We just held hands and kissed. What kind of man are you if you don't even dare to set off fireworks? He took the golden rice ball and stuffed it into his mouth, complaining as he did so. Lin could see the resentment and disappointment on Dabai's face. These were two extremely contradictory emotions. "I'm so envious of you. You managed to get the prettiest junior sister in our sect. Unlike me, I'm still a lonely old man." Mo Hai suddenly changed the topic and sighed with melancholy. Lin pursed his lips. "You're known as the most prodigious prodigy in the younger generation of the Vermilion Bird sect. Is it hard for you to find a partner?" "Sigh, it's all because of my habit of comprehending fire Dao true meaning from fire. I like to let my opponent burn me every day, causing many beautiful female disciples to think that I'm a pervert." Mo Hai did not hide anything from Lin and spoke out his troubles. Lin was shocked. He didn't expect Mo Hai to know so much about this. He thought Mo Hai didn't know. Dabai couldn't help but interrupt. "That's not difficult. You're a masochist, can't you just find a sadist? I believe that there are still girls who like to play with fire and drip wax with you." "Woof." Lin, Mo Hai stared at Dabai in shock. His mouth gaped open before he finally whispered, "Is there really such a woman? I've always had low self-esteem. Because of this habit, I thought I would be forever alone. Of course there will be. You, a masochist, have such low self-esteem. Don't tell me those sadistic girls don't have low self-esteem? They will also choose to hide their own attribute. All you have to do is stimulate their attributes and give them confidence. That way you'll be able to get what you want." "Woof." Dabai spoke with an emotional expression. Mo Hai's eyes lit up, as if Dabai had opened a door to a whole new world for him. "Speaking of sadism, isn't Sister Shangguan a very good partner? She'll surprise you from time to time, and you'll definitely be thrilled." Lin chuckled. "Sister Shangguan. A sad expression suddenly appeared on Mo-Hi's face. "What is it?" Unlin asked as he sensed something amiss. "She disappeared during the battle against the Holy Vermilion Flame. The elders deduced that she was most likely abducted by the Snow Maidens and taken to the Holy City of Ice." Mo-Hi replied in a low voice. Unlin faltered slightly upon hearing this before his brows furrowed slightly. Sister Shangguan Yi's aptitude in the Tao of Ice is extremely fearsome. The Snow Maidens most likely took a liking to her aptitude. Otherwise, there's no reason for them to abduct her. Sigh, that battle dealt a heavy blow to our Vermilion Bird sect. It shook the very foundation of our sect. Mo-Hi shook his head. Don't be fooled by the relaxed expression on the Grand Elder's face. I've heard that his injuries are actually quite severe, and he'll be going into seclusion soon. The sect leader received news of this and forced his way back from the demonic flame realm. In a fit of rage, he forced the holy glacial realm back over 1,500 kilometers and slew over 1,000,000 snow maidens, but that was not enough to save the Vermilion Bird sect. Thank God you managed to secure the holy Vermilion Flame. Otherwise, our Vermilion Bird sect would be in a lot of trouble. Mo-Hi turned toward the north. The Snow Maidens are very good at brainwashing. I hope we won't be enemies when we meet again. Unlin couldn't help but heave a forlorn sigh upon hearing this. What an unfortunate woman! She had finally received the approval of the Holy Vermilion Flame, and the Snow Maidens had arrived. She chased after the Snow Maidens, only to be captured by them. "Young master, and breakfast is ready," head chef Shao Chun suddenly yelled. "Come on, brother Mo, let's go eat." Unlin gestured. Mo-Hi shook his head. "I've just eaten." "Oh right, you and Su Xiaolan can go to the White Heavenly Tower after breakfast. Elder Zhu is waiting for you there." The White Heavenly Tower was a restricted area of the Vermilion Bird sect, and it was said that the most precious treasures of the sect were stored there. Unlin's interest was piqued and he asked, "What is it?" "It's great news. I'll be going now." Mo-Hi left with a smile on his face. After bidding farewell to Mo-Hi, Unlin relayed the news to Su Xiaolan with excitement in his eyes. Su Xiaolan's expression remained indifferent, and she expressed that she already had enough treasures. She didn't appear to be very expectant at all. After breakfast, Unlin immediately flew toward the White Heavenly Tower with Su Xiaolan in his arms. The White Heavenly Tower was a tower that hovered in midair, and the bottom of the tower was filled with misty white clouds. If a normal disciple tried to fly toward the White Heavenly Tower without permission, they would find that they were unable to get close to the White Heavenly Tower no matter how hard they tried. It was as if the tower was hovering in midair, and they could only look at it from afar. Unlin and Su Xiaolan didn't encounter this situation, and they arrived at the gate of the tower without any obstructions. Zhu Yuanzhou was looking at the two of them with a smile on his face. Zhu Yuanzhou was Su Xiaolan's uncle, and Unlin was a little nervous to see him. After all, Unlin had displayed his affection for Su Xiaolan in front of the entire sect the day before, and he didn't know what Zhu Yuanzhou's uncle was thinking. Elder Zhu looked at Unlin with a smile on his face. "Hee, Unlin, your rewards are quite generous. Why don't you store them in Su Xiaolan's storage ring?" Unlin faltered upon hearing this, and before he had a chance to say anything, Su Xiaolan immediately flared up with rage. "Elder Zhu, please be serious. Don't tease Unlin at such an important moment. He's the hero of our Vermilion Bird sect." Elder Zhu looked at his niece with a resigned expression and heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. "Unlin, I only have one question. Were you the one who took care of the 5 Holy Palace leaders?" Elder Zhu suddenly asked. Unlin fell silent for a moment before nodding. "Yes, I did. There was no need to hide something like this. His strength had always been a mystery, and no one would look into it. The entire celestial court knew that he had slain a monarch of the Dark Wing tribe, and the elders of the Vermilion Bird sect were definitely aware of this as well, so it wasn't a big deal for him to kill a few Holy Palace leaders. Sure enough, Elder Zhu only nodded seriously when he heard this. He didn't look particularly surprised, as if he had already been mentally prepared. Then from now on, you are an honorary elder of the Vermilion Bird sect. This is your badge, keep it. Elder Zhu smiled. Anlin stood rooted to the spot as he accepted the badge. He knew just how important the honorary elder position was. This meant that he could enjoy the privileges of an elder of the sect. Furthermore, as long as he met the requirements, he could enter all of the restricted areas within the sect, and he didn't even have to deal with sect affairs. To put it in simpler terms, he only had to enjoy privileges and benefits, but he didn't have to fulfill any obligations. Anlin felt like this badge was a little too hot for his hands. This was a position that even the elders of the sect yearned for, let alone the disciples of the sect. There's no need to decline, this is what you deserve. The significance of retrieving the holy vermilion flame is far greater than you can imagine. You've made a huge contribution to the sect. Elder Zhu looked at Anlin with a meaningful smile. Come, let's go pick out some treasures. Chapter 462. Anlin didn't refuse and followed Elder Zhu and Su Xiaolan into the White Heavenly Tower. After passing through the rippling restriction, an extremely vast energy fluctuation swept toward them. Anlin was greeted by the sight of a dazzling array of artifacts, all of which exuded a peerless light as they hovered in the air. Some of them were even wriggling in the air, as if they had a life of their own. He looked at the 20 or so artifacts and detected the energy fluctuations emanating from them to find that all of them were immortal tools. Anlin's eyes almost popped out of their sockets, but Elder Zhu didn't stop. Instead, he continued toward the second level. There were only 3 levels in the White Heavenly Tower, and it was said that the top level contained the sect's most powerful divine tool that only the sect leader was allowed to use. As for what was on the second level, Anlin didn't know, so he was very curious. The second level of the White Heavenly Tower was a little strange. It was a golden space with no end in sight. Come out, Vermilion Bird Origin Treasures! Elder Zhu yelled. Immediately afterward, 6 glowing artifacts flew toward Anlin and Su Xiaolan. Anlin and Su Xiaolan were both rooted to the spot upon hearing the Vermilion Bird Origin Treasures. The Vermilion Bird Origin Treasures were renowned throughout the Vermilion Bird sect, and they were considered to be the most precious treasures in the Vermilion Bird sect. They were artifacts that were even more valuable than immortal tools, and it was said that each and every one of them possessed unfathomable power and were priceless. There were a total of 10 Vermilion Bird Origin Treasures. Aside from the 6 here, only Sect Leader Zhu Shuza, Grand Elder Situfeng, and Great Elder Chen Shinran possessed Vermilion Bird Origin Treasures. One of them had already been lost. Come. You two can choose something that suits you, said Elder Zhu with a smile. That isn't a good idea. Anlin gulped to prevent himself from drooling. What's there to be embarrassed about? You're both disciples of the Vermilion Bird sect, and have made great contributions to the sect. After some discussion, the panel of elders has decided that you have the right to inherit one of the Vermilion Bird Origin Treasures, Elder Zhu said. Unexpectedly, Su Xiaolan didn't say anything this time. Instead, she stared blankly at a fiery red bracelet with a slightly dazed and nostalgic look on her face. She pointed at the bracelet and said, I want it. The Vermilion Bird bracelet? Yes, it should belong to you as well. Elder Zhu's expression also went blank for a moment before he nodded in affirmation. Then, a white formation appeared on the red bracelet. The crimson bracelet seemed to be attracted by some kind of aura and flew to Su Xiaolan's side with great intelligence. Then, it nimbly wrapped itself around Su Xiaolan's white wrist. Anlin sighed in his heart. This bracelet really matched Su Xiaolan. In the future, he could give gifts without the bracelet. There were only 5 Vermilion Bird Origin tools left. One was a shield, one was a sword, one was a bead, one was a brush, and one was a mirror. As a sword immortal, Anlin immediately set his sights on the longsword, which was shimmering with golden flames. He pointed at the long sword and said, "I want that sword." Elder Zhu nodded with a smile. The vermilion bird sword is peerlessly sharp and can draw upon the flames of heaven and earth to incinerate all things. It's the best weapon for killing and is indeed suitable for you. Anlin nodded with excitement. As a sword immortal, how could he only have a black sword? He had to have a gorgeous and powerful sword when he was flexing. Elder Zhu made a series of hand seals, and a white formation appeared on the red bracelet as the longsword began to ring. The longsword then slowly began to move. However, it moved backward and flew away right in front of the three of them. Anlin! Elder Zhu, what's going on? Elder Zhu was a little awkward. The vermilion bird sword seems to have rejected me. But that's alright. This kind of situation is extremely rare, but it's still within the realm of normal. Anlin's chest constricted upon hearing this. This kind of situation is extremely rare? That's alright? Speaking of which, Elder Zhu, are you trying to comfort me? He looked at the remaining 4 vermilion bird origin treasures, and was just about to continue choosing when the crimson bead and paintbrush seemed to have sensed something and trembled lightly before flying away. Anlin looked at Elder Zhu with confusion in his eyes. Elder Zhu turned to Anlin with an innocent expression. How about you pick some more? If you can't, I'll ask the Grand Elder again. Anlin's lips twitched as he looked at the shield and mirror before him. Pick some more? What was there to pick? This was basically king choice between the two. This vermilion bird shield is extremely sturdy. Not only can it summon the will of the vermilion bird to defend against external attacks, but it can also absorb external attacks and convert them into its own energy, either to replenish its owner's vital energy or to unleash it as an attack. The vermilion bird mirror is an extremely intelligent and knowledgeable mirror, so you can ask it if you have any questions. On top of that, it also has a concealment ability, and after charging, it has a 100% chance of reflecting an enemy's attack. Elder Zhu explained the effects of the 2 vermilion bird origin treasures in an earnest manner in order to divert Anlin's attention. Anlin immediately felt a lot more at ease upon hearing these effects. There was no other reason for this other than the fact that both of the remaining 2 items sounded quite good. The vermilion bird shield was about the same as the brick, but it had an additional ability to absorb energy to replenish vital energy and to reflect energy. As for the mirror, it wasn't very powerful in battle, but it had a rather peculiar ability. Knowledgeable and knowledgeable? Concealment ability? Reflection ability? It also sounded like he was pretty awesome. Which one should I choose? Anlin stroked his chin with a hesitant expression. I'll choose the vermilion bird shield, Anlin said. He felt like the vermilion bird shield had a similar effect to the vermilion bird mirror's reflection ability. The vermilion bird shield could also defend and convert energy, so it was a lot more domineering, which suited Anlin's style. Alright. Elder Zhu made a hand seal, and a white spell formation appeared over the vermilion bird shield, allowing it to recognize Anlin as its master. The vermilion bird shield shuddered lightly before flying away as if it were extremely afraid of something. It disappeared into the boundless golden space before disappearing from everyone's field of vision. Anlin, Elder Zhu, Su Xiaolan. A cold breeze blew past, and Anlin felt a little cold. In this cold and distant world, he really wanted a blanket that could give him a hint of warmth. Did I not wash my face or my hands today? Or did I not acknowledge Senior Bai as my master? Anlin looked at the 2 people beside him with a disconsolate expression. Anlin, don't give up. Don't you still have a mirror? Su Xiaolan consoled him. There was still a mirror? Anlin's lips twitched slightly. He had already been rejected 4 times in a row, and his heart was throbbing with pain. Was he going to be stabbed in the heart again? He pulled out his evil-slaying sword and stroked it gently. Little Xie, you're the only one who treats me the best. You're completely different from the sluts out there. As expected, the two of us are perfect for each other. A cold voice with a hint of disdain sounded. Hee, weren't you just saying that I'm ugly, and that you wanted to change to a vermilion bird sword? Unlin, weren't you in my storage ring? How did you know? Evil slaying sword. F***ck off. Unlin's heart throbbed with pain, and he really wanted to find someone to console him. Mr. Unlin, you still have the vermilion bird mirror to choose from, so you should give it a try. Elder Zhu hesitated for a long time before finally speaking to Unlin. There weren't many people who had the right to choose the vermilion bird origin tool, only about a dozen or so, and the vermilion bird origin tool would be returned to the sect after their death. However, none of them were like Unlin, who was mercilessly abandoned by all of the vermilion bird origin tools. Elder Zhu didn't know how to deal with this situation, so he could only let Unlin try first. Unlin refused to give up and summoned his Gundams. Gundams 1, Gundams 2, unleash the Ionic Deprivation Protection Formation and trap the vermilion bird mirror inside. I don't believe you'll be able to escape. The two Gundams immediately charged toward the vermilion bird mirror and spread open their arms to unleash a blue Ionic Deprivation Formation of 100 feet in radius, which enshrouded the vermilion bird mirror within. Elder Zhu, we can begin now, Unlin said with a smile. Elder Zhu, Su Xiaolan. Chapter 463. Elder Zhu's face convulsed as he looked at the vermilion bird mirror trapped within the Ionic Deprivation Protection Formation. What kind of mental blow did Unlin have to go through to force himself on Unlin? He thought about it for a moment before making a hand seal to make the vermilion bird mirror acknowledge Unlin as its master. A white spell formation appeared on the surface of the vermilion bird mirror, and the vermilion bird mirror shuddered before fleeing into the distance. Boom! The vermilion bird mirror crashed into the Ionic Deprivation Protection Formation, upon which a resounding boom erupted. You're not getting away! Unlin roared as he pounced toward the vermilion bird mirror. The vermilion bird mirror immediately fled in another direction, but it crashed into the Ionic Deprivation Protection Formation again, causing it to feel dizzy. The vermilion bird mirror was extremely fast, but it wasn't powerful enough to break through the barrier. Thus, Unlin and the vermilion bird mirror chased each other around the protective formation. In the end, Unlin pinned the vermilion bird mirror down with a sinister smile on his face. Hee, you won't be able to escape from me. Just accept me as your master. The vermilion bird mirror trembled uncontrollably. Why do I feel like Unlin is the antagonist? Elder Zhu murmured to himself upon seeing this. Su Xiaolan massaged her brows as if she couldn't bear to watch. Unlin didn't waste any more time with words and began to use his power to refine the vermilion bird mirror. However, to his surprise, he was obstructed by an extremely powerful force. What a stubborn mirror! Let me show you what I'm made of! Divine Inspection Technique. A white light flashed past Unlin's eyes as a stream of information flowed from the vermilion bird mirror into Unlin's mind. Vermilion bird mirror. A mirror crafted by the holy vermilion bird using the main bone of the mythological beast, the heavenly ice swallow. It possesses the power to reverse heaven and earth, and is extremely fearful of the vermilion bird. In order to forcibly refine it, a drop of your blood essence that contains the aura of the vermilion bird is required. Unlin's heart jolted upon seeing this information. He raised his head to look at Su Xiaolan and Elder Zhu, as if he was trying to prove something. No wonder the vermilion bird mirror is so afraid of me. It's afraid of the vermilion bird aura within my body. It's the same with those vermilion bird origin treasures. It's not that I'm not welcome, it's that the vermilion bird isn't. Elder Zhu blinked his eyes. That did seem to make sense. Su Xiaolan was a little hesitant. But I also have the bloodline of the vermilion bird, so why isn't the vermilion bird bracelet afraid of me? Rumble! Like a bolt of lightning, it struck the elated Unlin into a daze. Right? Why aren't you afraid of Su Xiaolan? Why are you afraid of me? Why did you abandon me? Unlin's previous excitement vanished into thin air, and his body suddenly felt a little cold. Other people would be treasures that would take the initiative to ask to be kept, but he would always encounter treasures that would run away with a look of disdain. Eat my blood. He suddenly let loose an enraged roar as he released a drop of golden blood essence onto the vermilion bird mirror. Screw it. Why should I care so much about whether I'm welcome or not? If I really like it, then I'll just force myself on it. The drop of golden blood made contact with the vermilion bird mirror, and it began to tremor violently. The blood seeped into the mirror, and a white light began to circulate on the surface of the mirror before disappearing. Unlin suddenly felt an inexplicable connection. This was the connection between the vermilion bird mirror and the vermilion bird mirror. He heaved a light sigh as a relieved smile appeared on his face. He picked up the vermilion bird mirror with a smile. Done. What's the point of running away? It's still mine now, isn't it? I'm your master now. Do you understand? Elder Zhu, Su Xiaolan. Just what kind of psychological trauma did he have to suffer to say something like that to a mirror? The vermilion bird mirror was an extremely intricate round mirror with a crimson frame and an icy blue surface. It was around the size of a human face in the past, but now it had shrunk to the size of a palm after being played with by Enlin. Elder Zhu coughed lightly. Seeing as you've both found your vermilion bird origin treasures, you may leave the White Heavenly Pavilion now. Enlin and Su Xiaolan left the White Heavenly Pavilion with a content expression on their faces. The vermilion bird origin treasures were the best reward that the vermilion bird sect could give them at this point in time. This was a clear indication of just how important they were to the sect. Enlin had also received the position of an honorary elder, which meant that he didn't have any missions, so he was free to do whatever he wanted. However, he was obligated to contribute to the sect whenever something big happened. He brought his badge to the Elder Cabinet to receive his salary for this year, which was 300,000 spirit stones. This was a huge sum of money to most people, but it was only 300 steamers of stuffed buns for him. After receiving his salary, Su Xiaolan took Enlin to explore all of the restricted areas in the Vermilion Bird sect, including some of the elder-level restricted areas. She also explained in detail the effects of cultivating in those restricted areas, and Enlin's heart itched with excitement. He wanted nothing more than to stay at the Vermilion Bird sect and cultivate there. The restricted areas were useless to him, but the restricted areas that could help him refine the power of flames in his body were very useful to him. He thought about it for a moment before deciding to go to the Vermilion Bird sect's Myriad Flame Heavenly Bridge when he was at the Soul Formation final stage. He had heard that there were unique treasures and pills that would be suitable for the cultivator who made it to the end of the bridge. On the way back, Enlin looked at the bracelet on Su Xiaolan's wrist with a curious expression. That bracelet of yours is so beautiful. Elder Zhu didn't give it any introduction. Did you already know about its effects? Su Xiaolan shook her wrist, and the fiery red bracelet glowed brightly under the sunlight. This vermilion bird bracelet has extremely powerful protective properties. It was an origin tool that my mother used when she was still alive. After the death of its owner, the vermilion bird origin tool will be summoned by the holy flame and returned to the White Heavenly Tower. Now that I've met it again, I naturally have to keep it by my side. Enlin's expression faltered upon hearing Su Xiaolan's words. No wonder Su Xiaolan had never mentioned her mother. So she had already passed away. He could also detect another hidden meaning in Su Xiaolan's words, and he was just about to say something. At this moment Su Xiaolan spoke again. Let's not talk about this for now. After all, only those who are powerful enough will have the right to come into contact with the Vermilion Bird sect. Enlin nodded. He knew that Su Xiaolan didn't want him to get involved in that matter. Soon, he returned to his room and pulled out the Vermilion Bird mirror. The Vermilion Bird mirror was an artifact crafted by the holy beast Vermilion Bird, so its abilities were definitely extraordinary. Lin placed the mirror on the table, and willed it to shrink to the size of a human face. The vermilion bird mirror could run, tremble, and resist. This was a clear indication that it was a very intelligent mirror. Lin looked at the mirror with a curious expression. Demon mirror. Demon mirror. I heard that you're a very intelligent and knowledgeable mirror, and I can ask you any question I have, right? A snowy white word suddenly appeared on the surface of the mirror. Master, I am the vermilion bird mirror, not the demon mirror. As for the rest of your description, it's very accurate. Lin was elated. No. I'm your master. If I say you're the demon mirror, then you're the demon mirror, understand? My adorable little demon mirror. 3 words appeared on the surface of the mirror. I don't know. You're such a tsundere. That's all right, I can take my time to teach you. Lin chuckled. Can you speak? A line of words appeared on the surface of the mirror. I can, but writing is more energy efficient than speaking. Lin became excited. Tell me, and I'll hear if you're a girl or a bumpkin. A line of words appeared on the surface of the mirror. If I tell you just because you tell me, then wouldn't that be very embarrassing for me? Lin felt like his authority had been challenged, and he chuckled lightly. You're not going to tell me? I'll throw you into a cesspool. Motherf * cur. A crisp, tender voice sounded. Lin wore a satisfied expression.